Call to order. Good evening, Canby. I will call to order the regular scheduled meeting for the City Council for September 15th of 2021. It's not on the agenda, but I do want to do an invocation. We don't have a flag, so we can't really do that very well, but we can do an invocation. So, Heavenly Father, I thank you for these leaders that are here to represent and work hard for our community. I pray that you bless us with some discernment and courage and making good choices for our community. Also, be with our first responders, keep them safe and out of harm's way, and our military folks, both abroad and at home. For all these things, we thank you, Jesus. Amen. First on the agenda, we have the proclamation for the POW MIA Recognition Day. Now, we don't have Irene Brashears on Zoom. She was having some challenges, but she is watching on YouTube. So hello, Irene. And I will read the proclamation as soon as I get it scrolled down to the right page. POW MIA Recognition Day. Whereas the United States of America has participated in many wars, calling upon its sons and daughters to fight for their country, and whereas American men and women have been held captive by hostile powers during their military service, and whereas many American prisoners of war were subjected to harsh and inhumane treatment by their captors, which often resulted in death, and whereas Americans are still listed as missing and unaccounted for, and the families and friends of these missing Americans, as well as their fellow veterans, still endure uncertainty concerning their fate. And whereas the sacrifices of Americans still missing are deserving of national recognition and support for continuing priority efforts to determine their fate. And whereas the city of Canby is proud to join with other cities in the state of Oregon and nation in honoring those still missing. Now, therefore, I, on the behalf of Mayor Brian Hodson, by the virtue of authority invested in him as a mayor of the city of Canby, hereby proclaim September 17th, 2021 as POW MIA Recognition Day in Canby, and encourage all citizens to join in this observance. Given unto his hand on the 15th day of September, 2021. This will be signed by the mayor and given to the folks over at the POW, or over the VFW with Irene Brashears. So thank you, Irene. I know you're watching us, so we appreciate all you guys do there. Next on the agenda, we have citizen input and community announcements. And Melissa, we do have some folks signed up, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And we have someone present here in the council chambers with us.
Okay. We will start in the order that we received them. So we'll start with, and I'm probably going to say his name inaccurately, so I apologize in advance. David Bahoran? Are you on, David? Let me look at the attendee.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, there you are. Yes, we can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. For those who know me, I'm David Bajoran. I've spent the last 13 years at the U.S. Coast Guard, 10 years on active duty, predominantly as a heavy weather boat driver, and the last 3 with the reserves as a law enforcement boat driver. And yes, I've had some near-death experiences in those years. They build character, right? I continue to serve in the Coast Guard because from day one, I believed in making a difference, saving lives, improving the world around me, whatever it takes. That seems to be lost on some. My wife Jocelyn and I moved to Canby and bought our first house here because we thought it was a charming place with good amenities, close to family, and a place we could afford to settle into as our kids started reaching school age. The more I see of Canby, the more disheartened I become. I have to be blunt about it. I didn't sacrifice 13 years of bodily harm for the good of others to watch my chosen home fall into chaos and division. I didn't sacrifice 13 years to watch my kids be put at risk by the irresponsibility of others. I didn't sacrifice 13 years to watch bullying tactics take over both on the individual level and at the official level. We all have a responsibility to do better. We have to. We owe it to our kids to leave things better than we found them. Progress is the understanding that the old tools you have aren't effective anymore. That comes from honest self-reflection, assessing facts and data, even when it contradicts your view. When your rigid views become weaponized, used to suppress someone else's way of life, it may be time to take a step back and think about what you're really trying to achieve. I want to be clear here. I don't think there's a problem with one side or another, as long as each side is willing to work with the other. Don't expect me to work with you if you're just ready to dismiss me and my view entirely. I'm happy to work with you, but I don't work with bullies. Believe it or not, I've been bullied my entire life, so needless to say, I don't take kindly to it. So what do we need to address? Well, instead of focusing so much on the politics of everything, let's focus on the real issues we face together. COVID's raging on. How do we get control of it as a city, as one group of people focusing on returning to our best life? Bullying tactics need to end, so why are they still present everywhere we look? And why is there so much political nonsense when we keep seeing the same problems? When people still blast through our local crosswalk, even with the lights flashing, why are we so focused on party politics, not addressing those real problems? The chaos needs to end. I just told my subordinates in the Coast Guard, give me 5 minutes to come up with a solution. If I can't, this isn't a simple problem. I'll be honest, there is no 5-minute solution to what we have going on here. But it starts with personal accountability. Maybe we can start looking into community building events, even online, to allow everyone to participate if that's what it takes. City Council as a whole should participate in these events. Let's see the humanity come out of everyone, not just a small group of citizens trying to fight the same old uphill battles. We need to start coming together more, and that starts with admitting we don't all know everything, and party politics are only hurting our chances of a better city. We all learn to compromise for the greatest good. When we don't, we find ourselves in our current dilemma. As this habit, I'll end with a quote, in this case, from Abraham Lincoln. You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Kathleen Jeske, and I failed to remind the previous speaker. Please state your name and address for the record and your comments to 3 minutes. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen Jeske. I live here in Canby. I'm not going to give my whole address because that's why I'm here. I'm going to talk about what's I heard going on in Canby, and I prepared this, which is 3 minutes. Ding dong ditch. TPing or egging houses, throwing snowballs and water balloons at cars, writing on walls, messing with mailboxes, tipping over outhouses. These are things that are done by kids, including many I know who are now productive adults. That first one happened at my house last week, and the last one was done by my grandpa when my great-grandpa was the sheriff in the town I grew up in. That was over 100 years ago when that happened. But kids doing mischief is at least as old in small town as that. Sometimes kids do dumb stuff because they're kids. Kid pranks range from annoying to costly to dangerous, but typically adults understand that kids will do these things. Of course, we teach them not to, like my husband and his twin brother got taught when a super fun evening of shooting rocks at houses from a slingshot resulted in the police visiting mom and dad, and they had to do a whole bunch of work to pay for broken windows. That's not the same as an adult doing any of those things, because adults should know better. And that's why I was so disappointed when I heard that adults in an online forum that's ironically titled Something Kids First publicly shamed a child for pulling out a yard sign and even identified the child and included a photo, I guess because they disagree politically with their parent. What that child did is for sure on the less dangerous, damaging end of the prank scale. And I just happen to know another child who lives near me recently did the exact same thing to a school board sign that I agreed with. I did not and will not name that child, nor did I put their picture on social media, nor did I say or even think horrible, mean things about them or their parents, because I'm not a child. I'm an adult that cares about kids, and that's why I'm here talking tonight. I was a teacher for 30 years, so I know lots of naughty things that lots of kids have done, and none of those kids were bad kids. Kids make mistakes, they all do, and it's the job of adults to teach them to do better. So why do we have adults, including even some city leaders, in a forum where not only do they not speak up and intervene when a child's being bullied, but some even participate by making or liking rude comments about the child and the child's parents? What in the world is wrong with an adult who would do that to a child? Studies show that between the ages of 12 and 17, kids who experience bullying are significantly more likely to report suicidal thoughts. Even standing by and watching bullying without speaking up contributes to a child feeling that they're alone. And over the years, I have seen far too many kids take their own lives because of that feeling. Adults are supposed to protect children, not act like them, and certainly not endanger them. So if you're participating in the kind of behavior that can contribute to a tragedy like that, you need to step back and take a good long look at yourself in the mirror and maybe think about this quote: "Let he who is without sin among you cast the first stone." My husband knows that throwing stones can get you into a lot of trouble, especially if you live in a glass house. Thank you. I hope we can do better.
Thank you, Kathleen. Linda Tate? Linda Tate. David Tate.
Council President Hensley, I'm trying to find her. Just one moment here. I have a long list of people signed in today.
Okay. It looks like Linda and David have dropped off the participant list. They were on it earlier.
No, we're not. We're here.
Oh, there, you're back now. I see you now. Okay, we'll start with Linda since she was on the list first. Linda Tate.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Odd? Okay. I sometimes feel like when I address you guys, like you're not paying attention. There's no respect to speakers. So I would really appreciate it if people would like look at me, because it's hard for me to talk to people who are like going off blank and doing, it's just hard. Okay. Thank you. No, it's just respect. Thank you for having us here tonight. I would like to start out by saying that I don't dislike Mayor Hodson. I never have. And I don't dislike any of you either. I don't think you're bad people or anything like that. My words are not filled with venom. I just don't feel that right now you're capable of leading this city in a way that creates solidarity. We've tangled over other issues, proclamations that were only for certain members of Canby and not the others, resolutions that were a little less than truthful. I do appreciate that you all agreed to the resolution that put it in writing that moving forward, you would all agree to tell the truth. But I'm here again under these distressing circumstances. It's come to my attention that Mayor Hodson is a member of a private social media group that posted pictures of Sarah Spoon's child. He was made fun of, misgendered, and called a girl, and more. There was no point to this other than to create more division than what already exists in our town. When you only hang out with people who agree with your agenda, that's easy, because then you're always right. It's when you block people like myself on social media, which our mayor has, who may come to you in love and say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't right, that you lose sight of what's real and what's fake. You fall down the proverbial rabbit hole and you don't even know it until it's too late. I think it's too late. I think the line was crossed. I asked him to resign after the proclamation debacle. I asked him again after the truth-telling debacle, and I would ask him a third time, but I'm quite sure that will fall on deaf ears as well. So I'm going to address the counselors instead. I have to know, do you all feel he's a good leader? Do you all feel he behaves on social media the way he behaves in public? Do you feel he's capable of being everyone's mayor? Do you believe in him? I'm going to ask you to talk about this amongst yourselves, and I'm going to ask that you put it to a vote. Maybe not tonight, but soon. I want to see a vote of either confidence or no confidence. Those of us who consistently fall into the other category just need to know, do you all support all of us or just some of us? All of Canby's people or just some of them? Because right now it feels like it's just some of us. These positions are not supposed to be politically driven, not left, not right, just the work of the people. dog parks, walking trails, stuff like that. That's it, that's all. So we need to know, can you do that? Because if not, why not? Take your vote. Do you want to continue on the path you're currently on? Live in the environment that the mayor has created, or do you want to change your ways and start over? It's completely up to you. Thank you.
David Tate.
David Tate, P.O. Box 1242, Canby, Oregon. Canby may be or may want to be a moral community, but that's not the way our system of government works. If a community has a moral code, it doesn't come from religious ideology or religious leaders. We live with a distinct separation between church and state. We are not a community of morals. We are a community of laws. Policies and punishments are not handed down by self-appointed religious leaders who are accountable to no one. Our laws are created by elected officials, accountable to the citizens that elect them. Those laws must bring equity and be enforced equally without moral judgment. In Canby, it's not against the law to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, but we have citizens that isolate these members of the community, and they seek the council's approval and support. You cannot allow that to happen. In Canby, it's not against the law to be Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. But we have citizens that discriminate against this community, and they seek the council's approval and support. You cannot allow that to happen. In Canby, it's not against the law to be Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Druid, Wiccan, agnostic, or atheist. But we have citizens that hold the belief that the majority religion is the moral code of this community and that the council was elected to approve and support this belief. You cannot allow that to happen. I challenge the elected officials of Canby to be more than representatives of constituencies. I challenge you to be leaders, civic leaders. Civic leaders must not shape or define or influence moral standards in a community. Rather, civil leaders should promote good policies and pass fair laws that bring equity and are enforced equally throughout the community. Civic leaders recognize and value the unique contribution of every member of our city, and by acknowledging and embracing them, they gain respect in our society. I urge you to hold yourselves accountable to be civic leaders for all of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. The following is a letter that was received and asked to be read into the record. Dear Mayor Hodson and Canby City Councilors, I am writing as a community member and mother of a Canby teenager with a simple request on a serious issue. As public leaders, please speak out clearly against the bullying of our children and young and youth by adults. Most notably, this has been happening on social media in recent days and years, where adults have been posting pictures and negative comments about specific youth in our Canby community. Some public leaders seem to be indicating approval or acceptance of this by their comments or silence. It is wrong for our mayor, any city councilor, or frankly any adult in our community to facilitate the bullying of a minor. It harms the child, the family, the teenagers in our town who are definitely watching what we're doing and the fabric of our community. Please speak up and make it clear that the Canby community, including its leaders, will not tolerate attempts to target or ostracize our young people. More specifically, please be clear that we won't take our political differences out on the children of our leaders. What if our teens instead saw the leaders in Canby respecting one another's families and working together across differences to lift up our youth, our schools, our businesses, and shared spaces? I still believe Canby is uniquely positioned to be a thriving small town that celebrates being a politically diverse community, but we have to work to get there. Thank you for your time and consideration on this issue, as well as for your public service, which I do appreciate is extra challenging in these times. Christy Bernclough-Halver. We have one in the chambers. Do we have anybody else signed on that I haven't heard about, Melissa?
You do not.
Okay, then Ty Spoon.
Hello, my name is Ty Spoon. Everyone hear me okay? I I just want to start out by saying, so that it's clear, that I am Sarah Spoon's ex-husband. I'm also the father of Ezra, who is the child that has been referred to multiple times in the online doxing and abuse. I'm not a political person. I've never been here before. I'm not here today because of Sarah. I am here because of my child. It is completely ridiculous that I need to be here, to be honest. I thought we were better. I thought we were adults. For adults to do this to a child is ridiculous. I know that the council all has children. I don't know how many of you listening at home have children, but imagine, if you will, your 13-year-old being followed by an adult, being filmed, being told things, being put online, and having those same adults and other adults make comments about them. They're kids. It's hard enough to be a kid already. You are dragging them into shit that is not their fight. I'm ashamed to even be involved in this at all. To know that the mayor was in the group and didn't stop it, participated. I have been told that the mayor has said kids should be off limits. But when given the opportunity to intervene and make the kids off limits, the mayor did not. That's not okay. All of you, please think of this as your child. What would you do? My child's afraid to walk down the street. My child looks over their shoulder when they go places. It's not okay. I didn't have prepared comments because whatever I said, I didn't want to be reading it. I don't know what else to say. This is not okay. People should be ashamed of themselves. I hear people talk about how we're a good community and we should do better. Yeah, we should. And I shouldn't have to be here. I shouldn't have to be here defending my 13-year-old from a bunch of grown-ups. I don't give a damn what your political opinions are. This isn't about politics. This is about grown-ups picking on a child. I don't know what the resolution is. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here because someone needs to be standing up for him. And unfortunately, it can't be his mom because of her position. So I'm here. And it's not okay. Do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spoon. Any last minute sign-ins, Melissa?
No.
Next up on the agenda is a public hearing. Script. The matter presently before the City Council is an appeal of a matter heard previously by the City Planning Commission. The record of this hearing was created before the Planning Commission. New evidence that would have to be considered by the Planning Commission will not be considered tonight. The Council will hear oral arguments or review written arguments by the applicant, appellant, their agents, or others who have previously presented testimony to the Commission. The applicant is the original party appearing before the Planning Commission. The appellant is the party appealing the matter before the City Council. Failure to raise an issue at this hearing accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal to LUBA based on that issue. You will be limited by time for your argument. The applicant will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. The applicant may use all of their time in the initial, presentation or reserve a portion for rebuttal. Appellant will follow and be given 10 minutes to speak. After appellant's argument, others that wish to present arguments will have 5 minutes each, followed by any rebuttal by the applicant has reserved for closing. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a yellow public testimony card. Are there anybody in the chamber, Melissa? No? Okay. Those people other than the applicant and appellant that are interested in presenting oral or written arguments, please indicate your desire to speak or submit written argument by raising their hand at this time. Is there anyone on the list, Melissa, for this particular agenda item?
There are 6 people that would like to speak. Or second to speak.
Other than the appellant and the applicant?
Yes, under proponents of the appeal.
Under proponents, okay. 6 proponents, I'm making a note. Conflict of interest. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing on the present matter. Councilor Varwig.
Yes, one of the principals of the company that's presenting tonight has been a client of mine in the past, and so I think that for the sake of transparency, it's best for me to abstain from any vote or comments tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Parker.
No conflict, will participate.
Councilor Spoon.
No conflict, will participate. I do walk by the property on a regular basis, but I've had no contact.
Councilor Banks.
I've had no contact. I can participate.
This is actually conflict of interest. We haven't got to the ex parte yet. Ex parte contact. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with, I will say, sorry, I do not have a conflict of interest and I plan to participate. Ex parte contact. If any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and substance of that contact at this time. Councilor Parker.
None.
Councilor Spoon.
As I said, I do walk by it on a regular basis, but have had no contact with anyone involved.
Okay, just getting it plugged in the right spot. Councilor Banks.
None.
Councilor Varwig.
Again, just planning to abstain, so none.
Okay. Does any member of the audience have any questions for the councilors or mayor regarding ex parte contact or conflict of interest? Taking a quick look at the participant list to see if there's any hands up. I see hands up. Is it in regards to conflict of interest or ex parte contact? Carlos Valadez. No, okay, hands down. Bob Cambra. Hands down. Okay, apparently that was for another question we'll get to later. The public hearing will go as follows. Staff report. We'll begin with a staff report followed by questions, if any, by the hearing body or of the staff or staff. Opening the public hearing for the testimony, and so I'm going to now. Yeah, that's sorry. My computer's jumping all over. I apologize. Staff report. Then we'll have testimony, or the arguments from the applicant and appellant, proponents, opponents, and then we'll close the public hearing. I will now open the public hearing and listen to the applicant's argument. Mark Wild from State Street Homes is to be presenting. Is that correct? Do we have Mark?
Council President Hensley, were you going to give the staff report first?
I apologize. Yes.
Okay. Okay, perfect. And then do you have an amount of time that you were going to allot to the applicant, the appellant, and then the proponents of the appeal?
Yes, I did that. It was 10 minutes for the applicant, 10 minutes for the appellant, 5 minutes for the proponents.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure I was trying to write that down.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
So then the staff report, of course, is whatever you guys have to give us. So we'll start there.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Eric Forcell. I work with the City of Canby Planning Department. I am the planner in charge of this project. I'm going to start off with a presentation. Just make sure that you can see it and hear me okay. My colleagues in council chambers, can I get the screen share ability, please? Thank you. Everyone see that okay? Good. So again, this is an appeal hearing of a planning commission approval of a design review type 3 project. The city file number is APP 21-03. Project is for a 12-unit multifamily development. I'm going to give you a summary of what I plan on talking about today in my presentation. There's a lot of material to cover. I hope to kind of get through it in an expedient manner, but I think it is important that we dive through and explain what's happening here. So first, I'm going to discuss the existing conditions on the property and the applicant's request. I'm going to go into a general discussion of zoning and the role of planning staff. Then I will discuss the summary of what staff believes the appellant's primary statements or assignments of error are. I'll discuss the appeal criteria that the council is charged with when reviewing an appeal of a planning commission decision. And then lastly, I'll round it off with staff's conclusions. So again, the proposal here is to develop two multifamily structures. Each will contain 6 units apiece. They'll be evenly split. There'll be 3 2-bedroom and 3 1-bedroom units in each building. So 6 in a building, totaling 12 units on the property. The development is proposed to take access off of Southwest 3rd. It doesn't have frontage, but it does have the benefit of an existing 26-foot wide access easement. And then within that easement will be the actual travel service and a pedestrian pathway to provide connection to the public interface and infrastructure. Both the structures are proposed to be 3 stories in height and approximately 5,250 square feet. This is the subject property. The dashed lines you see there are where approximately the access easement will be located. The red star is the subject property itself, so that's where the buildings will be placed. Doesn't have a site address because it's vacant. It is directly behind and adjacent to 285 Southwest 3rd Avenue, which is that red roof right there. The site itself is approximately 0.44 acres, so a little less than half an acre. It's largely level and it does have some existing mature trees. And then I mentioned that it's taking access via a private access easement. So the subject property zoning, the property is zoned R2 high density residential. You'll see that orange color are all the properties that are zoned R2. It's in basically a corridor of high density residentially zoned properties. There are some highway commercial properties directly across the street on Southwest 3rd and Grant. They're also to the south, you'll see the more kind of beige color, I guess. That's going to be R1 low density residential. So this is a image of the applicant's preliminary site plan. These are the 2 structures, 2 apartment buildings. You have your parking. this is the access easement. It was kind of hard to fit this onto a screen, but I have some other images for you. This is the proposed fire turnaround area. So you have your typical, it's a hammerhead turnaround, fire to come in and out. The blue line and buffer, blue kind of rectangle box there is the 15-foot required buffer in addition to normal setbacks for property that is next to an R1 zone. And that applies only to multifamily developments in an R2 zone that are adjacent to an R1 zone. That buffer is intended to kind of reduce potential impacts to adjacent R1 zone property. These are the existing conditions. So on the left-hand side of your screen is basically a vacant lot with a shed that was proposed to be demolished. And then on the right hand of the side of your screen is the subject property and then the adjoining property next door. And this area to the left is where the access easement is proposed to be. This is the applicant's preliminary landscape plan. So with all design review applications, we require a certain type of landscaping and a landscape plan in general. I think the key aspect to note here is that there is a proposal to place a number of large plantings and trees along that buffer area with the adjoining R1 property, and that's going to be on the right-hand side of your screen, those larger circles. So as staff, we kind of, given some of the arguments that we've seen, some of the statements the appellant has made, I think it's important that we frame what may seem somewhat elementary to some people, but what zoning and planning mean, and in the context of this development, so that we all understand what we're dealing with in this particular instance. So the subject property itself and that surrounding area that I showed you earlier, so this area with the star being the subject property, have been zoned high-density residential R2 since at least 1980. And so we're talking about over 30 years. This wasn't a recently rezoned property. And as part of that, there's property rights that are associated with the R2 zone. And primary among those are the ability to construct multifamily developments as an outright permitted use. So not as a conditional use, as a outright permitted use. And the only limitations on that are that you need to meet certain design review requirements, which is largely why we're here today. The R2 zone itself requires a minimum density of 14 units per acre. And this project is proposing 12 units on about half an acre. There is no maximum density. The way that works in our code is maximum density is limited by impervious surface area. So the amount of area that is not hardscaped with pavement or concrete or structures. This height of the buildings themselves, setbacks, parking, in this case, some recreational area, and the buffer zone. So while there is no hard cap number on maximum density, there is really a de facto cap on how many units you can fit onto a single property. In this case, market forces are the principal driver for development. The city isn't incentivizing this. We're not encouraging this. We're a neutral party reviewing projects against the code criteria. It's staff's belief that these properties largely have been vacant or have not been redeveloped because the market did not see them as favorable for redevelopment. And that has now since changed. So again, so planning staff, we don't propose development projects. We review them against the code. We review and provide recommendations based on the evidence supplied by the applicant, in this case to the Planning Commission originally. We also we're not robots. We also understand that not all development is desirable for every person, and also that inevitably there are going to be conflicting opinions and conflicts that arise with new development, and that's obviously the case in this particular project. We do believe also that this project avoids demolishing the existing structure on 285 Southwest 3rd, so that's that adjoining property, saving the existing single-family home. It's been suggested that it may have historical value, although it's never been included in any formal registry, nor has there ever been any kind of movement that staff's aware of to include it in a registry. So some of the things that we don't do, planning staff do not review projects for what most people would consider subjective issues, such as neighborhood compatibility, historical value. So that's whether or not a non-registered or identified structure has historical value. I'm not an architect. I couldn't tell you for certain whether one building or not would be included in a historical registry. And we also generally don't base our assumptions and analysis based on appearance of things. The appellants have suggested that this development is contrary to the existing development in the surrounding area in Southwest 3rd Avenue. But the reality is that on closer inspection, staff believe that really Southwest 3rd and the surrounding area is a mixture of uses. It's not all single family homes. There's Commonwealth townhomes, there's also apartments, and there's single family structures. So here's an image to that point. You could see this is the development site in yellow. That's the proposed apartment area. Two driveways down the street, there's 12 unit apartment complex that was built in 2019. Right next to that, there's 4 townhomes. Kind of a little bit closer towards Ivy, there's a number of apartments and apartment structures. Further down Southwest 3rd, there's 7 townhomes. And then up here on Southwest 2nd, there's 4 townhomes. Somewhat like a that would be the new multi-component of Southwest.
Eric, you're breaking up. Are you there?
Here, yes. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you again.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we hear you again. We missed the last few sentences there, though.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. So I was going to say that this is talk a little bit about the Planning Commission decision. The Planning Commission reviewed the staff report and they listened to significant testimony from the neighbors. They also reviewed an initial traffic analysis letter, which was provided by DKS, who is a consulting traffic engineer and planning outfit that does a lot of work for the city of Canby. With conditions, remain confident.
Trouble hearing him.
The Planning Commission made.
Yeah, he's going in and out for me too, Tracy.
Okay. Eric,
Let me. Yeah.
you have maybe a
Can
poor.
you still hear? Can you hear me okay?
Eric, you may want to turn your video off. It will help with your audio settings.
Can he screen share with his video off?
Yeah, I should be able to.
Let's try that.
Can you hear me?
It's dicey.
Okay.
Melissa, is there a way for him to call in and do audio via phone instead of through Zoom?
Melissa, is that a possibility?
We might be able to try him on our speakerphone here, but there's not a phone option for the Zoom. But we can try with our speakerphone and see if that'll work.
Just trying to be able to hear what he has to say and stay on task.
Can you hear?
I lost you again. Oh boy. I miss real meetings. This is hard. Looks like we lost Eric altogether. Are we going to try and reintroduce him on a different connection? There he is.
Melissa, this is
now?
Ryan. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Can you hear me okay now?
So far, so good.
Okay. Hopefully I don't have any more issues. I apologize. So where I left off, I'm going to share my screen again. Can you see that and hear me okay now?
The sound seems more stable to me, but it was before too, so I guess we'll just see what happens, Council President.
Yeah, so far, so good.
Okay. So basically, again, here where I was speaking about the composition of the neighborhood, and then this yellow box is the proposed development area. And down the street, there's a 12-unit apartment project that was built in 2019, and then 4 townhomes built very close next door. There's also 4 townhomes on Southwest 2nd and 7 townhomes on Southwest 3rd, and then a number of apartments in between Southwest 3rd and South Ivy over here to the east. So the Planning Commission reviewed the staff report, and they listened to significant testimony from the neighbors, many of which I assume you'll hear from tonight. They also reviewed a traffic analysis done by DKS, who does a lot of traffic engineering consulting for the city of Canby. And the Planning Commission voted 5-1 to approve this project with conditions. And staff remain confident that the Planning Commission made the correct decision based on the evidence.
You're breaking up again.
So I understand that the appellants are the neighboring property owners, Patsy Fifthfield, and Barn.
Okay. We can't hear you say their names, but we see them on the screen, so they're in the record. Are you there, Eric?
So, yes. That number of information from parties post typical comment periods for this project. And as a courtesy, staff tried to include that information to the greatest extent possible. We have been receiving comments even as late as this early, around 4:30 this afternoon. We try to get this into the record in front of you. We have it available should you want to see it.
Okay, there is a number of items and a lot of information in our packet. I have to say, I'm really glad you have the slideshow presentation to share with us, since we aren't able to hear all of your words. At least we can read them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm seeing what's going. Can you?
You're kind of breaking up, and some of what we hear sounds like you're in a fishbowl a little bit.
Okay. So these items in front of you here are the appeal criteria. These are the criteria that the city council is charged with when reviewing a planning commission appeal. And the three items are found in A, B, and C. And you'll see these multiple times as I go through this presentation.
Okay.
So now I'm going to summarize the appellant statement. The appellant appears to make a variety of claims and assignments of error, and staff does our best to summarize those assignments of error as they're relevant to the approval criteria and the appeal criteria. We received a lot of information, which is in your packet, and in addition to some other supporting statements that came in after the initial appeal that was received some time ago. And I also wanted to point out that staff recognized that some of the appellant's claims do have value outside of the approval criteria. However, it's planning staff and the planning commission's charge to review projects based on code criteria and not subjective comments about opinions on compatibility or neighborhood composition. So I'm going to dive in a bit on some of the more salient points that were provided to us by the appellant. The first is that the appellant believes that this application was processed as a type 2 application. And staff's response is that that's an incorrect assignment of error. In attachment F in your staff report is a letter from staff to the applicant stating that they did to process this application as a type 3 procedure rather than a type 2. Additionally, the application was deemed complete as a type 3 application. It was noticed as a type 3 application. A public hearing by the Planning Commission was held to review the type 3 application. It was voted on and approved consistent with the procedures of the Canby Municipal Code 1689. Those are our procedures that we use to review applications. And then the decision notice was sent out via type 3 criteria. And then lastly, had it been a type 2 application, it never would have went to a Planning Commission public hearing. So I wanted to kind of clear the air there because there's some comments about this being processed as a type 2, and that's just simply not the case. The appellant also claims that staff used the incorrect matrix for design review for this project. Staff also believe that is an incorrect assignment of error. What happens in these types of projects is the residential design standards matrix, which is in 1621-070 multifamily design standards, replaces the matrix, which is in the design review chapter 1649. I'm not sure why the appellant believes that we used the wrong matrix, but that's the correct matrix. That's the one that was presented in the staff report to Planning Commission. That's the one we discussed, and that's the one that we evaluated. So in addition to the assertion that the incorrect matrix was used, there's also an alleged assignment of error that staff did not calculate the points required to make this a passable application. So in this instance, I highlighted C that you see down there below to your right. There are times where certain elements in a design review application are not applicable. And in that case, the applicant should not be penalized for trying to score points that they can't possibly score. In this instance, there's a item called street and block framework, which applies to developments of 8+ acres. This project's 0.44 acres. There's no feasible way for them to achieve those points. So they were removed from the total. This project scored 39 out of a total possible 65 points, which is exactly 60% of the required points, which meets the standard. The same points analysis and same removal of the street block framework was applied to the Tivoli apartments, which are these apartments here, the 12 apartments built down the street in 2019. Same standards, same criteria that was used. Nothing's changed. So we're applying this consistently when we review design review projects for multifamily structures. Here's some images of the actual matrix themselves and how staff evaluated the points and counted them up, just kind of showing us our homework. So that gave us our total, which we used to calculate and determine that 60% was gained for the project. This was discussed at Planning Commission. Commissioners didn't raise any issue with it in that original public hearing. And so I'm not sure that the points, I'm not sure where the disagreement is there, but staff believe that the correct amount of points were counted for the project. Next, the appellant claims that the trip generation was incorrectly calculated by using the low-rise apartment buildings instead of mid-rise apartments, and that comes off the Institute of Transportation Engineers traffic generation figures. So that's a lot of words, but essentially there's an argument by the appellant that the trip generation should have used low-rise instead of mid-rise. But the reality is that the reality is that basically what we're getting is you're getting more trips from the low rise than you do from the mid rise. And that's comes from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. So you'll see here 7.32 trips from a low rise project and 5.44 for a mid rise project. And the table above is the analysis from DKS, the consulting traffic engineers, and they determined that the total daily trips from this project would be 88 daily trips and a total of 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. peak trips. So basically there was a conservative approach used here, I think actually to the benefit of what I believe the appellant was driving at, in that 88 trips were used rather than 65. The other important thing to note is that regardless of whether you chose low rise or mid rise, the project is well below a threshold for what's called a neighborhood trip impact analysis, which is when a project produces 30 peak trips or a total of 300 daily trips. I do want to mention that I have Kevin Chewick on this call. He is a transportation planner from DKS. Should you have additional questions as we move forward with the presentation about transportation related aspects, he would be happy to help address some of those for you. So next, we did, and this came out very recently. I just got the data today. This is traffic count data that was gathered on September 8th and 9th. These are called tube counts. And the tubes were placed on Southwest 3rd Avenue. And what they found is that there was an average daily traffic volume of 1,107 trips for those days counted. It's important to note that I think generally we can mostly agree that COVID is not impacting trips. High school is back in session, so there's people moving more freely and more normally than probably if this was done 6 months ago. And they also found that the average travel speed was 21 miles per hour, which is a pretty reasonable rate of travel for a low traffic volume local street. And that generally less than 2,000 vehicles per day and low speeds indicate a livable and a walkable local street. And this information kind of supports or ground truths what was found in the analysis done by DKS, which was presented to the Planning Commission. So one of the probably most contentious aspects and that I believe staff has identified with this project is that the driveway is a tricky part of this project. As I mentioned before, the subject property doesn't have frontage on Southwest 3rd Avenue, so it is taking access via private access easement. That access easement is lawfully established and it exists for the purpose of ingress and egress to the subject property. At Planning Commission, staff acknowledged that the driveway was going to be probably a difficult component of the project. It's the tight space to fit the driveway. But there is enough room to accommodate a pavement. Our code requires a 5-foot separation from property lines. DKS, who I had mentioned before, analyzed this and concurs with that assessment that this can be achieved to accommodate the code. And then also important to note that even if it's impractical and the spacing can't be met, that a slight deviation can be provided administratively. We vetted this with the city attorney. The code allows for a deviation so that a property that has lawful access onto a public road is allowed to take that access. That's kind of leads into my next bullet point, is that the city cannot prevent somebody from taking lawful access onto a public street by means of an established and recorded easement. So KS, again, they've reviewed this twice and they found both times, this was presented at the Planning Commission, that the driveway can be accommodated for. And it's also important to note that the driveway spacing standards have been consistently applied to the way we review development and traffic studies throughout Canby. And then again, the Tivoli project, which is down the street, almost the exact same. So I have an image here. There's a lot going on, but this came from DKS and it speaks towards the spacing requirements and essentially how the spacing requirements are measured from driveway to driveway and also from driveway to intersection. So the purple line is the driveway to intersection with Grant Street. And then the green line is the spacings between driveways. And what this is essentially showing is that it is able to meet the spacing standards from intersection and from driveway to driveway. And that those measurements are done from center line and not from edge of pavement. I may have Kevin explain that in more detail if council has questions about how that works. But they are confident and staff concur that the spacing can be met per code. So here's an image of the down the street, a little grainy, but very similar conditions. Here's an image of them constructing the driveway. You'll notice, close proximity to neighboring property line, close proximity to this house. All was reviewed, approved, very similar standards, and a private drive that goes back to those apartments. So the reason I'm showing you this is that staff have consistently applied this. This isn't a one-off scenario. So this is the actual driveway plans shown themselves. They have staff believes that the applicant has options here. They could potentially put the sidewalk area along I guess that's going to be the eastern side, and shift the pavement slightly, or they could do it on this side. Some of this it largely would get hashed out in a construction plans area, but all of the infrastructure that you're going to see in there is going to be within the access easement. They're not building it onto someone else's area without being in the easement itself. So a property right through the easement to build their driveway. Again, staff recognize it's tight. That was a contention at the Planning Commission. They talked about it for quite some time, and largely it came into agreement that it could be done appropriately and approved it. Next, the appellant claimed that the easement does not meet setbacks. I think they were mentioning to the adjacent house. They also had mentioned something about the HVAC unit. The reality is that private access easements are not evaluated for setbacks, and that the easement pre-existed the development. It was there already. And it's staff understanding that the current owner of 285 Southwest 3rd was aware that this easement was there when they purchased the property. Generally, when you buy property, you pull a title report, and you'll find that there's any kind of encumbrances, easements, or restrictions are going to show up when you buy property. Next, there's a number of claims about overflow parking onto Southwest 3rd Avenue. And the reality here is that overflow parking isn't part of the code criteria. We have our parking code, which is found in Chapter 1610, and the proposed development meets those parking standards. There's at least one parking space that's going to be provided for every unit on the property. And as of today, the city does not regulate parking in the public right-of-way, so that we don't have a dedicated parking enforcement team. We don't ticket people or have, meter maids. And there really is no way to know or claim that each unit's going to have a car or multiple cars. We just don't know that. But what we did do is, and what Planning Commission approved, was we reviewed the proposed project against the parking code in 1610, and it meets that. So here again, these are the appeal criteria which council is charged with when reviewing an appeal. So it states that the city council shall overturn the decision of the Planning Commission only when one or more of the following findings are made. The first one is that the commission did not correctly interpret the requirements of the planning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, or other requirements of law. So staff's position that planning conferred against code, law.
Eric, you're breaking up again. Is there somebody in your home that might be streaming on the same line as you are? Because you're breaking up again.
I don't think so. Let me. Wait 1 second. Can you hear me okay now? Yep, okay.
Yeah, that's better.
So again, this is the first criteria that you're charged with as counsel to review on an appeal. And staff believe the Planning Commission thoroughly reviewed and vetted the application against the criteria of the code, the comp plan, and state law. And there was significant deliberation involved in the decision of this project and its relation to the code standards. I recall the meeting being about 3.5 hours. It was not a short decision-making process. The next is that the commission did not observe the precepts of good planning as interpreted by the council. So what do precepts of good planning mean? They're decisions that are made consistent with Oregon statewide planning goals, environmental impacts, and an honest and dutiful analysis of code criteria. And staff's position is the Planning Commission did embody the precepts of good planning when rendering the approval of this project. And then lastly is that the commission did not adequately consider all of the information which was put to the case. So the Planning Commission had a thorough record the initial hearing, so we had a continuance and they did a traffic analysis, and that wasn't specifically required by code, and the applicant did that to bolster the record. And the appellants and probably many of the others in opposition were present and were able and had ample time to provide their input during the public hearing at Planning Commission. And the commission heard that testimony, asked questions, and then performed further deliberation. So staff's position that there was more than enough information for an objective decision on this matter. So I'm gonna go into the conclusion component. Thanks for bearing with me. I had no idea what's going on with the internet connection. So to conclude, the subject property, again, it's zoned R2, high density residential, and as is much of the surrounding property on Southwest 3rd Avenue. And that requires a certain density, which is 14 units per acre. And multifamily development, which includes 3-story apartment buildings, are allowed as an outright permitted use in the R2 zone. These buildings are under that 35-foot height requirement. The traffic consulting engineers and planners reviewed this project twice for traffic impacts, safety, livability, and they found that the project can meet our code and did not identify any major safety or traffic. Next is that staff believe the access easement can be constructed to adequately provide 2 lanes of ingress and egress and a pedestrian interconnection. That the proposed development consistent with our code, and that the proposed development will provide ample landscaping and buffering to neighboring properties. And also, staff have provided a number of conditions which are found in the staff report, hopefully just mitigate impacts and to further bolster or improve safety measures for traffic and pedestrians. This is my last conclusion point. So again, the Planning Commission thoroughly vetted this project. It was about a 3.5-hour public hearing process. They heard a number of public comments. They reviewed our staff report and the applicant's responses, and they voted to approve the project 5-1. So again, that's what council is charged with today, is did the Planning Commission make the correct decision? Neither staff nor the consulting traffic engineer engineers believe
Can't hear you,
we
Eric.
believe that we followed. Let's see. We believe that. Can you hear me? Okay.
So far, so
We also believe that the procedures in the Canby Municipal Code were followed to the letter, and that the project was reviewed consistent with other projects that we've reviewed in the immediate vicinity, and that ancillary issues such as historical structures, exceptions of neighborhood or other comments are not codified and are not a reason to deny a project. So this is the criteria that Planning Commission used when evaluating a project. Again, lastly, these are the criteria when reviewing an appeal. And then you have, as a council, you have some options for motions, and I have these presented for you. Your first would be to make a motion to uphold the approval of the Planning Commission's decision with the conditions stated in the staff report, in the original staff report. Your second motion would be to move to uphold the Planning Commission approval and modify the conditions. So that would be changes to them, add, subtract, modify. And then lastly, your third option would be to move to reverse the Planning Commission's approval based on one or more of the criteria in A, B, and C. So that concludes my
okay, you're breaking up.
information.
I heard that concludes, so we'll go with that. And again, I'm really glad you had the slides because that helped us out when we couldn't hear you. We could at least read your words. Are there any questions for Eric from the council? Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Council President Hensley. I have just a couple of questions for clarity. I mean, I read through the packet and I know that I believe some of them are answered, but just for clarity, were any variances given in the approval of the subject property application?
No, there were no variances given, Councilor Spoon.
And one of the issues brought up by the appellate, by the people filing the appeal is some concern over the fact that a transportation analysis letter was instead of a traffic impact study, and that they had requested a traffic impact study. Can you explain to us why that happened and what is normal in this case?
I can briefly touch on that. I may also ask from DKS does those analyses and studies on the thresholds. The simple answer is that this project, as proposed, does not generate enough trips based on pretty standard metrics to necessitate a more thorough analysis.
That's
Traffic
in the slides that it only met. You didn't use the same language, so I just wanted to make sure that was the explanation. So you addressed that on the slide regarding number of trips per day, right? During the peak hour specifically, 300 trips per day was like the threshold?
Correct, yeah. It's based on peak trips and then 300 trips per day. And this project doesn't meet those thresholds. That's why a more thorough analysis was not done.
Okay, I think that answers the questions I had. Thank you.
Any other questions from council to staff? Councilor Banks.
Thank you. I had, do I have my mute thing going on? Yeah. I have just one question because you answered all the others. The appellant claimed that the only fire truck that can handle a 3-story building is the ladder truck, and that the driveway would not be big enough to accommodate such a truck. Do you have any information on that? And perhaps you're not the ideal person to ask, but that was a concern that I thought had some validity if it was true.
Yes, thanks for the question, Councilor Bangs. So at the early stages of this project, the applicant had been working with Canby Fire, specifically Matt English, on this. They requested a 26-foot clear, and so the applicant, my understanding is they increased the easement width to accommodate that. That's part of the reason why we would like to see either a rollable curb that can support a fire engine of that size, like a ladder truck, or an at-grade curb. So they would have 25 feet plus of travel surface to move their apparatus equipment in the event of an emergency.
All right, thank you. The other question I had, and you might not know this, but this property is it a little island? Was it originally attached to the property at 285 Southwest 3rd, and then was some previous owner the person who subdivided it and granted that easement through the property at 285 Southwest 3rd? That's that house with the beautiful yellow house with the red roof.
Right. I don't know the legal lot history of this property. I do know that through a lot line adjustment, we believe that both lots were separate legal lots. And that traditionally how that would have worked is that you would have needed to have granted an easement for ingress and egress. Otherwise, you have a useless landlocked parcel. But my understanding is that the easement was in place, and the applicant may be able to speak more on that. But from our initial analysis, everything seemed to be appropriate. I don't know the the land division history all the way back though.
All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Councilor Parker, are you good? Councilor Varwig, are you good? Okay. Thank you for the staff report. I am now going to open the public hearing for testimony. There we go. Applicant's argument. Do we have Mark Wild or Katie Perrino-Friesen available? Is the applicant available? Hello.
Both of those people are in our attendees list. Well, Mark Wild was, and he isn't anymore now.
Yeah, but he's showing that. Are we having trouble getting her on?
Mark is showing in our screen now, so I believe he is ready to speak.
Mark, are you there?
Yeah, now it looks like it's letting me in. It wouldn't let me in before. Can you guys hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. You have 10 minutes for your argument.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Mark Wilde with State Street Homes. We're the applicant for this project. I'll take a quick second and just thank the council for hearing this tonight. I wanted to thank Eric for his really, really diligent work on a robust staff report. I think he touched on all of the items from the appellant pretty clearly. I'm not going to go back through and address each item in the appeal, again, because Eric did such a great job on that. So I'll just kind of quickly summarize our position in this project. And I think I'll just start by saying we picked this, we're a small developer. We do smaller multifamily projects kind of throughout the state of Oregon. We pick emerging markets. So we pick markets that look like they have a significant need for housing. And we identified Canby a while back. We saw that the rental vacancy.
You muted your, there you go.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, vacancy is 1.4%, which is incredibly low for any community. And so that's why we identified this community. I think when we do a project and when we apply for a project in any community, we work pretty hard to work within the existing zoning. I think as Eric outlined, the zoning, the high density zoning for this property has been in place since 1980. we generally don't go in and try to propose a project where we need variances or we need to change or deviate from the code or the zoning. And we've got a really great designer that worked on this project and is very well versed in the City of Canby code and designed a project that met all the criteria when it comes to parking, density, minimum, maximum density for the project and the units, and access. And then lastly, I think I just kind of wanted to draw our attention back to the amount of effort that we put into on the study of the traffic impact for this project. This is a relatively small project in the world of multifamily, and the amount of work that we hired DKS to do twice, essentially we had them look at this project twice, significantly more than we would normally do for a project this size. And again, we did that for several reasons. One, we wanted to make sure that that our position that this property was not going to negatively impact the community, especially that neighborhood, by what we're adding to it was accurate, but also just to be able to present that to the Planning Commission when we made our original presentation and to help ease the neighbors, those that had concern. I also wanted to address what's come up several times about compatibility of this project, and I think that that's a fair conversation topic. I think that's subjective in nature, as I'm sure you guys are all aware. It's, as Eric pointed out really well, this particular community, in fact, this street is full of a mix of properties, both single family and multifamily already. So I think we fit in that way. The architectural design of this project is one that we feel is incredibly attractive. I think that, again, it's subjective, so not everybody agrees with that, but we're designing for the future. We're designing for the future of what we believe for Canby. I think that this is one of many multifamily projects that will happen in this area, especially with this zoning, and especially as Canby continues to grow and have a demand for affordable housing. I think that people often lose sight that each of us comes from a different economic status, and not everyone is in a place where they can come into a new community and purchase a $550,000 home. There's still a lot of us that need access to affordable housing and a nice apartment that provides adequate housing, but that is affordable to all families. And so I think that's what we take a lot of pride in. This project provides that for Canby. And clearly, again, with a rental vacancy of 1.4%, the data shows and supports that statement. As far as the actual items that the appellant addressed in the original appeal, again, I think Eric did a great job. I think it's clear that DKS went back and addressed these items with driveway spacing from both intersections and neighboring driveways. We agree with their findings and how those apply to code. I think that there was the part that where we talked about in the appeal that the appellant felt that this was reviewed as the wrong type, and I wanted to bring the attention back to that this project was reviewed as a type 3 from the beginning. So from the beginning of our incomplete letter, it was reviewed as a type 3. The neighborhood meeting was type 3. The application and notices that were sent out were based on a type 3, and the staff reviewed it as a type 3. And then, of course, the Planning Commission considered it as a type 3. And so I think that's really, really important to bring our attention back to. As far as, I'll touch real quickly on the conversation about the neighbor that the easement runs through and the home that is in front of our project. The previous owner of that home is the one that did this land division. So we did not do this land division. We purchased this from that owner. So that owner did the land division, established the easement, and then we took possession of the property after that. So we did not do that land use, but that particular property line adjustment was done and approved as meeting all the standards and the criteria of the code for that particular. So I can definitely say without hesitation that owner was very, very aware of this project. And so with that, I'll go ahead and reserve the rest of my time to address any rebuttals.
Okay, thank you. Now we have the appellant has 10 minutes. The appellant would be Jennifer Driscoll, are you on? And Mark, can you unraise your hand? Thank you. Jennifer, are you here? Jennifer, I see you on the list. Can you connect?
Hi, I think I'm unmuted now.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. And you have 10 minutes for your arguments.
All right. Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate you making the time for this. I do want to take a quick moment to share that the appeals being made on behalf of a group of neighborhood citizens, not just a few that were listed on the required form. From Southwest 6th North to 99, there's no neighborhood association. And without one to represent us, we had to give my name as an appellant and the contact. The Fifields and the Claibornes, who live on either side of the access easement, signed per the form's requirement to allow access to their properties in the hopes of further review by the city or their agent. And the following residents also contributed to raising the $1,980 appeal fee. Nabby and Carlos Valadez on South Holly, Sandra and Robert Salmonson on South Holly, Brian and Megan Nava on South Holly, Rhonda and Dave Shetman on Southwest 3rd, Brian Boss on Southwest 3rd, and Karen and Doug Borfanius on Southwest Grant. So we filed the appeal because we were hoping to get some answers to the concerns that we've been raising since before the Planning Commission hearing. So some of the questions in the appeal that were answered that were incorrect were because we were still trying to get answers for comments that were provided prior to that original May 10th meeting date cutoff for a response from the planning staff. We had, a number of us had actually provided our comments and gotten a response in the staff packet that was released a week or so before the meeting. And many of the comments were saying that we didn't give specific enough code references to be able to address the concerns, that they were just, sorry, I lost my thought, that they were just opinions on things that we needed to point to code. So we confirmed we could provide more feedback and gave really extensive code specific feedback and concerns. That's actually the 50 pages that didn't make it into the original staff packet that ended up getting re-released. 41 pages of that was pretty detailed inquiries from the residents of the surrounding area. We'd hoped we'd get a response to that before the June 14th meeting because it was moved out, and that didn't end up happening. At the meeting, the testimony was limited to 3 minutes for each person. So without the benefit of the responses to the questions we had raised for the close of that initial 5-10 meeting comment window, we didn't get to make the best use of all of that time. The Planning Commission meeting was very long, in part because 2 commissioners who had seen the area in person were very concerned about the access point and its proximity both to an intersection and it running parallel with another existing driveway. The commissioners were told that there were no exceptions to code being made by the project, and this is not the case. And that was particularly detrimental to the review process because they tend to take approvals of exceptions quite seriously. 5 of the commissioners and city planner Eric Porcel all stated that the project size and design were not complementary nor particularly compatible with the existing neighborhood. Planner Porcel insisted that that was not a consideration that could influence the commission's decision, and ultimately, 3.5 hours on, only Commissioner Boatwright continued to withhold his support in the final vote. We're not sure how a 3-story modern building matches with the neighborhood, but even more importantly, we feel that community safety has been a seriously overlooked issue in this location. I had spent a few months pushing for a copy of the Type 3 application because only a Type 2 was on file with the city and provided to the public in the documentation in the packets. I was trying to understand exactly why compatibility of the neighborhood had to be disregarded. There's something called the design review table in each the Type 2 and the Type 3 applications, and they're different. And so since we only saw a Type 2 application and it was using one specific table that did not consider the distance to the intersection of being less than 70 feet as a concern, or compatibility with the neighborhood as a concern. I was trying to understand why we didn't use the type 3 table. As it turns out, there is a exception to use the type 2 table in the type 3 application. There's no indication of it on the form. And again, we didn't see a final form from the city, so it was confusing, and I was really just trying to understand what was going on there. We heard over and over from staff and the commission that compatibility wasn't something commissioners could worry about, and that homes being noted by the Heritage and Landmark Commission's efforts as potential historic or heritage contributions were not something that could be considered. And we were told that the related density and height concerns also have no place for that. I believe Carol Palmer, the former chair of the Heritage and Landmark Committee, has requested to clarify some of the representations of her comments that were in Planner Purcell's staff report for this meeting. But both chapters 16.49.40 and CMC 16.21, which is the whole thing, the primary code chapters that are used to assess this project, and this one in particular, do speak to development compatibility and urge that the design and size are appropriate to other structures in the same vicinity. So does the Type 3 application itself, the Historic Preservation Plan, and the Comprehensive Plan. 16.21.10 says that purpose B is for compatibility in height, bulk, setback, and overall design between infill housing and adjacent established housing to the extent practicable. Additionally, the standards are intended to promote compatibility and transitions between multifamily housing and adjacent uses. And 16.49.40 says the Type 3 application should determine compliance with B2. The proposed design of the development is compatible with the design of other developments in the same general vicinity, and that B3, the location, design, size, color, and materials of the exterior of all structures and signs are compatible with the proposed development and appropriate to the design and character of other structures in the same vicinity. The comprehensive plan states that housing element finding number 3, the establishment and long-range planning of residential areas having differing density characteristics requires careful coordination with other plan elements. It's critical that higher density areas be served by a transportation network adequately sized to handle the traffic generated, and that higher density areas should not be located where the existing road pattern lacks capacity to provide access or service to residential areas, or where unusually high traffic loads would pass through established neighborhood areas. And most importantly, without adequate coordination with the overall transportation system, high-density housing can place an undue strain on local street networks, as well as creating major safety problems. And while some of that is kind of speaking to large developments, there's a lot of consideration for the fact that this is a safe route to school for the kids and the proximity of this to an intersection. So none of the things that I read are allowing for design and size compatibility to be the only consideration to deny an application, but there are a number of significant safety considerations that weren't acknowledged by staff that were not considered by the commission. So we have codes regarding safety that indicate limiting the density of buildings on the lot to protect the community. And there was a comment made by Planner Purcell that it's not their job to look at any of these things, but they're actually in the code the considerations that they should be making along with the other determinations. So it's important to note that we're not appealing this because we're against development. It's an R2 high density block. There was a 2-story, 8-unit project, not 12, a couple blocks a ways down from this. And there wasn't a big fight about it. But this project's actually 2.5 times the minimum number of units required. It's 3 stories. And we're worried about adding so many more families, especially at an intersection, in an area that has a lot of safety issues now. So 12 units is 2.5 times the 5 units required by code for 0.44 acres in an R2 zone. That was noted by Studio 3 Architecture, who did the work for the State Street, Easements in recreational areas have to be subtracted from the lot size to calculate the minimum, so it's not just a straight calculation of 0.44 divided by 14. And while there is no maximum density for R2, fully aware, when the access connection spacing required in 16.46.30 doesn't meet the minimum distances between driveways, which is 10 feet between driveways, or intersections, 50 feet, which this apparently just ekes over, then there's a number of criteria for limiting access or building density to ensure public safety. So, I mentioned that, Eric's slide 13 that showed the neighborhood that had the 12-unit apartment that's actually 8. Most of those projects that he was pointing to as part of the community already, they don't have access from Third. They're accessed off of Ivy, or they're like way down on the end by Elm, which has actually contributed to the traffic problems that we'll touch on. But
Driscoll?
Yes?
You're at your 10 minutes, so if you can make your final point, please.
Oh, shoot. All right, oh, fudge. I really need everybody to please look at page 175. 175 in the packet. This is showing you the lot line adjustment. Holy crud. This is showing you the lot line adjustment, and you can see that it shows that the change was supposed to be made from 20 to 26 feet, and that the entirety, underneath that, it shows that the entire distance between the edge of the lot line on the left and the house is 30. And 30 minus 26 is 4. They are going to be putting a driving surface 4 feet away from the master bedroom window of the people at 285. And that really isn't a matter for concern. You can't have 2.5 times the minimum density and a driving surface 4 feet from where somebody puts their head. That's really a concern. If nothing else, since I didn't get to show you the pictures of what this intersection looks like, so you can see how incredibly close it is, and how everybody leaving the State Street project will end up taking a left right into that traffic, because the TSP is going to change the traffic direction at the end of Ivy and Third, and everybody's going to take a left. There's not going to be anywhere to park. There isn't now. The Traffic Safety Commission has already been looking at how incredibly concerning the traffic situation is in terms of Southwest Third being a one-way street, and the fire truck can't get down Southwest Third with all the cars on it now. Holy moly. It's just, please, I hope you're looking at page 175 and you can see that this really is a concern. It's 4 feet away from that house. There is no difference between the left side of the easement that there's DKS is saying, well, they can shift something. You can't shift anything. They're 26 feet. Can't shift because the far left side of it, there's a driveway, an existing driveway right next to them in 299. There's the only thing that separates it is a fence that's going to be replaced with another fence, because this is 10 feet away from 299's front door and it's 4 feet away from 285. So there's going to be a 6-foot fence on either side of it, and they can't really move anything any which way. They can decide if they're going to put the sidewalk close to the house on 285 or if they're going to use it to add some kind of space between two existing parallel drives that are 100% right next to one another. But that's it. You know, those are the only options. So nobody has ever said that State Street shouldn't be able to have access to their lot. The Claibornes actually they did the service and saying, yeah, we think for safety, with the fire department should be able to get back there. And they agreed to that 26-foot easement increase. That happened in the course of them buying a house in the middle of COVID. Oh, hey, by the way, if you want to buy this house, you have to agree to increase this from 20 to 26. So they did. But the city of Canby really shouldn't say that doesn't matter. The priority needs to be the safety of the people who live in that house and will live in that house in the future. And I think even if the city was going to approve the easement to be larger in the interest of the safety of people who might live in the back lot when that's developed, that doesn't absolve you of being really concerned about the fact that you're talking about putting a driving surface on 100, it's almost 200 feet between the street and the back lot, a straight line, and they're going to put rollable curbs on it, so there's not even a curb to let a car know that they're going off the street, and then there's going to be it's a straightaway. You can go really fast if somebody is drunk or they're just being like careless. They're going to run into people, and it's just not cool. So I'm sorry you told me I was at 10 minutes and then I started rambling, but there really is. There's a lot of difference between the project that gets pointed to, the Trivoli project. It really isn't the same. 8 units, 2 stories. There's a curved entry into it. People can't gather speed. It's not right next to where somebody sleeps. It's 6 feet away from an attached garage. But I do feel like those are very different things than having the cars. So thank you. I'm sorry that I didn't get to give you a more, that I wasted time not telling you the really important parts. And everybody else who I'm supposed to be representing, I'm just sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Driscoll. I appreciate your testimony. We're going to move to the proponents of the appeal. These are going to be timed at 5 minutes each. The first on the list we have is Maria Valadez. Is she on? Maria?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome, Maria. Thank you.
My name is Maria Navidad Valadez, and my husband is here with me. We live on South Holly Street in a residential 1 low-density area behind the proposed property located on 285 Southwest 3rd Avenue. It's concerning that this proposed building is a 3-story building that will be overlooking my backyard. I believe that the number of apartments can be limited to a more reasonable number to be in line with the neighborhood compatibility scale and appearance. According to the Studio 3 architecture report and the calculations of minimum density of Canby Municipal Code 16.20.030, the minimum number of apartments is 5 according to that report. So the fact that we arrived to 12 apartments in less than 1 acre, 0.44, is my question. Why are we putting so many apartments in that concentrated area in my backyard, right behind the buffer? So who's going to pay me for the loss of property value? The other concern that I have in regards to traffic, with another 19 cars or 19 spaces or 12 apartments, in order to afford to live at these apartments, it requires 2 working adults and 2 cars per apartment. There's currently issues regarding parking due to the congestion of the street, where parking on both sides is a concern. I know that when I navigate that Southwest 3rd, that I often have to pull aside so that the oncoming traffic could get by, or vice versa. And so it is inevitable that there's going to be issues, because there are issues existingly right now. 3rd Street is a school walking zone that does not have the adequate safety measures to ensure the safety of children. I spent over 4 years driving with my daughter, driving her to high school pre-COVID, and I saw a lot of safety concerns. This is also known to Canby, according to the Canby Transport System Plan. And it's concerning that there are safety issues, but they're not being addressed appropriately, in my opinion. I'm requesting that you overturn the Planning Commission approval of the project, because the impact on my property will be significant in terms of livability and financially. I believe that you can make this decision that will be favorable to the majority that does not want this development in our backyard. We don't oppose it, but the existing plan is not, I don't support that because of those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, Melissa, I'm going to try to log in again onto the same meeting through my laptop, because even though I am plugged in, going backwards in battery, and I'm down to 5%. Since I'm kind of presiding, I kind of need to be here. So I might need to get in another blank. So please look out for that. The next proponent of the appeal is Carlos Valadez. Carlos, are you here? Carlos?
I reported everything that he wanted to say, so.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move to Gina Taylor was next on the list. Do we have Gina? Gina Taylor does not appear on the participant list. Melissa, do you have any more information about Gina?
I don't see her there.
Okay. Moving on then to, oh dear, I lost the list. I apologize. I accidentally hit the X. Oh man, I really wish we could go back to live meetings. Melissa, who's the next one on the list?
Council President Hensley, just as a note in the chat, there, the community's asking, saying that Gina would have had several people cede time to her, and it looks like she was probably kicked off, and can we come back to her? So can we add her back at the bottom of the list in case she's able to reconnect?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I see the chat now. Thank you. Yeah, we can circle back to her if she can get reconnected. I'm dealing with connectivity issues myself. Yeah, my battery is now warning me I have 5%. Melissa, who's next on the list? I'm trying to reconnect here.
We have Rhonda Shetland, and
who was next after Carlos? After Gina?
Rhonda Shetland.
Rhonda, are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I had emailed some pictures that Melissa said that she would be able to provide to you. One of them is a picture of the house in question, and I just wanted you to be able to actually see it from the front and how beautiful it is. Another picture is the picture of the Tivoli driveway that State Street keeps talking about, and I want you to notice how obtrusive and how much concrete that is right next to the existing houses. And then the last picture is the picture of the trees that are going to be removed in order to put a driveway like that into the lot next to the yellow house. And then there should be a Word document that is just a list of all of the properties in this area that have already been surveyed and deemed as contributing resources to this neighborhood. Some of my neighbors are going to speak about traffic safety. No less than 3 times in the last year, I have witnessed my elderly neighbor almost being hit by a speeding car while attempting to walk across Southwest 3rd. There are frequently bumper-to-bumper cars parked along the street, and there are enough cars at the corner of 3rd and Elm that can be difficult to pull into traffic. These are my personal experiences living on Southwest 3rd. The State Street proposal will only increase this problem, but I will let my neighbors talk further about the details of that topic. I would like to focus on the importance of maintaining the small town feel of Canby. The staff report for this appeal says that it is difficult to understand how the State Street proposal will ruin the character of our neighborhood when there are 2 similar projects already on 3rd Avenue. However, these buildings are only 2 stories tall and are designed in a somewhat similar style to the surrounding homes. There is nothing on our street as large or as tall as the proposed buildings. Even though these complexes are more suitable than the current proposal, it is their very presence of these buildings that demonstrates how this type of construction is not compatible. The concrete drives that are needed to access these apartments obtrusively stick out between the homes. And because of this, the last block of 3rd Avenue is almost entirely concrete. The proposed modern 3-story buildings will be easily visible above the existing homes, especially after a row of old-growth trees is removed to accommodate the 21-foot wide driveway. Shorter buildings will allow for a narrower drive and a less visible complex behind the existing home. I hope this type of construction will not continue on Southwest 3rd. In July 2020, just 15 months ago, the Historical Preservation Plan was adopted by the city to identify, preserve, and protect places of historic value. This document is meant to guide the city when it makes decisions with conflicting priorities, especially about new construction in historic areas. As stated in this document, making sure such growth does not destroy what makes Canby special is important to its residents. Over the years, surveys have been conducted. The 17 addresses included on the provided list, roughly in the area of Southwest 2nd and 3rd between Ivy and Elm, are listed as contributing resources by the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office. 4 of these properties are identified as being examples of period architecture. The Knight House, which is just a few blocks from the proposed building site, is identified as an historically significant resource. There are an additional 10 pre-40s homes on Southwest 3rd, including the home at 285, which have been listed in the Historical Preservation Plan as historical resources, but have not yet been surveyed. City Planner Eric Forzel commented at the June 14th Planning Commission meeting that the house at 285 Southwest 3rd does appear to be some architectural or historical character. Whenever I speak to people about where I live, the comment I have received over and over is, "Oh, you live in Old Canby." The Historical Preservation Plan is meant to give the council the ability to protect the history and small town charm of Canby. It is an additional layer of consideration for new construction in any area of historic value, regardless of that area's zoning. It gives the council the ability to alter plans, for instance, reducing height and density, to ensure that they are compatible with the surrounding structures. I ask only that the council please follow through on the priorities that it has itself established to protect historic Old Canby from this incompatible project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next do we have Gina back yet? Hearing nothing from Gina, we'll move to Billie Jean Claiborne.
I'm sorry, hon.
Hi, this is Billie Jean.
Go ahead. You have
Yes. I apologize. First of all, I would like to say that although we did agree to the 26 foot, we didn't realize how close that would put the roadway to our house. It makes this side of the property unusable, and the roadway would be 6 inches from our AC unit, blocking any walk-through capability. I want to say thank you to Jennifer for her concern. I'd like to voice my safety concerns with having a roadway 4 feet from my bedroom wall. It's very reasonable to think that at some point, someone may drive right into the bedroom with it being so close, and at very least causing damage to my property. And lastly, we took a look at our title documents, and Exhibit B contains the easement information. And in Exhibit B, it states that the purpose of the easement would be a roadway purpose and access. It does not say anything about a sidewalk, and I hereby do not agree to have a sidewalk on this property. The roadway is allowed, but the sidewalk is not. We do not give our consent for that sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, we have Jonathan Claiborne.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Jonathan Claiborne. I am the owner of 285 Southwest 3rd Avenue. where this property will be going on. My wife spoke a little bit about us knowing and being aware that the easement would be 26 feet. And like she said, we just didn't realize at the time, maybe we didn't do our due diligence to realize that it would be 4 feet from our house, from our bedroom window where we sleep. It completely makes that side of the house unusable to us. Like she said, it's 6 inches from our AC units is right where that road will be. Cars driving 6 inches from our AC units. It just is a huge red flag for us and a safety concern. We don't think that it's safe for us to sleep at night with cars driving in and out that close to our house. And as she mentioned also, I was speaking with my lawyer today. He encouraged me to look at the easement document on in my title agreement, and it does mention the easement there, although it states it's a 20-foot easement, and we know it's been changed to 26. The specific language in it states that it would be for the purpose, roadway purposes and access. So which is allowing, and we agreed to allow an easement for a roadway to go through our property. But we do not consent to having a sidewalk on the property. And he advised me, my lawyer advised me that if the council decides that they're going to proceed with this project anyway, and they decide they put in a sidewalk, he would be more than happy and have a very strong case and a lawsuit against the city and the developer, State Street. And I fully intend to do that. So I hope that you guys take that into consideration. It's our intent to keep the community a single family home dwelling. I mean, I know that's not what maybe some others want, but definitely in our little neighborhood, we have all single family homes except for a few exceptions. And this one is much larger than any of the existing ones. It's just sad to think that big city developers want to come in and make our small community as densely populated as Portland. So I just hope that the council considers all the different things. I wish that Jennifer was able to have more time to speak. She didn't get to a lot of key points that she had prepared on behalf of us all. But thank you for your time. And that is it for me. Thank you.
There we go. Sorry, I had to get to a different screen. I'm on my laptop now. Thank you for that testimony. We have, it looks like, come to the end of the list. Do we have Gina back yet?
There's a comment in the chat that says that she registered but was never given the link. So she went to use someone else's link, and because it didn't show her as an individual, she couldn't be connected. So Melissa, was she able to receive a link when she registered to speak earlier?
So the link's the same for everyone. It's on the top of the agenda, and I just emailed it to her as well. So she can just click on that, but it should work. It's the same link that everybody receives posted on their agenda. And I just did email it to her again, so she's able to have access to her email and just click on that, then she can register.
Okay.
And Council President Hensley, there was one more person that had signed up, Bob Canberra.
Right, that's right. He wasn't on the original list, but you did tell me that. So let's go with Bob Cambra, and hopefully Gina can get on during his testimony. Bob, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mr. Cambra, welcome. You have 5 minutes tonight.
Gotcha. Thank you for this opportunity to present my concerns at this hearing. This project's design has an inadequate number of on-site parking spaces, which is will have a very negative impact on this neighborhood and roadway. Presently, it's my understanding the plan calls for 19 spaces for 12 units. Experience shows that households will have at least 2 vehicles per apartment, despite size. Plus, the complex should provide at least 3 visitor spaces for a total of 27. Whether you go with 19 or 27, what I'm saying is they're going to use up more. They're going to use up more spaces than they have built there. On this roadway, on this roadway, parking is extremely problematic. Why? Presently, the roadway on 3rd measures 31 feet with two sidewalks of 5 feet apiece. Presently, people are parking on 2 sides of the street, which has been common. This leaves at least only 14 to 15 feet of usable space for 2 ways of traffic. And that is and it's not even reasonable. Present oncoming traffic weaves between open lanes and open parking spaces to get by. This is very problematic and makes for a very, very difficult passage. And as you know, there's a lot of traffic that goes through these streets on a regular basis, and they're weaving. Presently, school buses that travel this lane often are concerned because they run into oncoming traffic and there's no place to go. But more importantly, for this particular lane, the long ladder fire truck that would be needed to service the 3-story complex that is being planned here could not manage a 14 or 15 foot space to go down that roadway. That road, presently, the fire truck, per the fire department, has a width of between 16 to 17 feet. That's the width of the front of the truck. So that truck would have a difficult time even getting through to that building complex as it presently is planning. The Canby Traffic Safety Commission is presently in the process of studying this railway to consider recommending changes that would affect the availability of street parking as it is. Options include eliminating parking on one side of the street, which would then provide enough space for the fire truck and other traffics to get easily through. The point being that there's a possibility that the ongoing parking that is presently there is going to be reduced. This project has a great probability that it will add on-street parking, which would add an extra dimension to problems in that community. My other concern is that, in addition, considering the extended flow of traffic in and out of this project, I question the size of the sidewalks and its relative closeness to the intersection with Grand Street. If you allow this project to go forward, some provision needs to be made to not allow any parking next to that driveway so that there's greater vision, both from the people turning from Grant or from the people exiting that apartment building to get onto 3rd, so that they can see unencumbered the traffic flow. And there's no provisions right now for that, but I ask you to consider those as a new condition. New projects, as this one, should add to the livability of a neighborhood and not subtract from it. The plan needs to be changed so it does not add to the neighborhood's existing problems. I thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Bob. And I have to say, you timed that very well. You only had 16 seconds left. You've done this a time or two. Okay, I see Gina Taylor on the list. So we're going to circle back to her. Gina, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for your patience. I'm glad I'm here. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to pull up my comments and read them to you. Okay. I am Regina Taylor. I live at 173 Southwest 6th Avenue in Canby. My testimony is that the access driveway size and location warrants the need to reduce the number of units to reduce the impact on the community at large. Decreasing the number of units would decrease the economic benefit to the developer in the short term until a solution to the access can be attained, but would benefit the community in the categories of pedestrian safety, traffic safety, and avoiding the increased street parking that is expected to occur from the 12-unit proposal. We do have an ordinance in Canby, 1646010. It reads, number of units in residential development, a major factor in determining the appropriate density of residential development, particularly in higher density areas, is vehicular access. That's the end of the quote. The access to this site is very problematic because of its size, shape, and location, which is parallel to an existing driveway and connects to the public street at the nexus of an intersection. There is currently no alternative location that can be used to remedy the problem, but I see this changing in the future. We need to utilize the ordinance to limit the number of units until that better access is available. To reduce the number of units is to reduce the problems that are created by building an apartment complex here. Higher density will magnify the traffic and safety concerns. Lower density will minimize them. An appropriate density must be determined. There's no ordinance that tells us how to calculate an appropriate number of units here. It's simply impossible to design and word an ordinance that can be successfully applied to every situation. The comprehensive plan has many places that tells us, that gives us guidance in this, on this topic. One of them is a quote, the rules were written to minimize drastic changes within established neighborhoods while still offering the widest possible diversity and new residential developments. Ordinance number 690 marked a major effort to balance the cost of housing with the stability of the existing residential neighborhoods. We're supposed to get along. That's the end of the quote from the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan buildable lands, finding number 2 on page 59, speaks of urban growth and says, in planning to accommodate considerable population growth, Canby is committed to a comprehensive approach. The best way to implement these objectives is to increase the density and intensity of land uses within the urban area. This is not to say, this is a quote from the comprehensive plan, this is not to say that all regard for aesthetics is going to be dropped in favor of high-rise development. Rather, a recognition of the fact that through appropriate design, the utilization of land can be maximized without adverse impacts on neighborhood appearance or the overall quality of life in Canby. End of quote. Another portion of the comprehensive plan on page 104 and 105 says Canby shall continue in its efforts to assure that all new developments provide adequate access for emergency response vehicles and for the safety and convenience of the general public. In reviewing development proposals, assure that access is adequate, but discourage unnecessary traffic through residential neighborhoods. Close coordination will be maintained between the circulation patterns and new developments and the density, intensity, and design of the proposed land use. Briefly here, I want to interject that although Jennifer didn't get to this part of her testimony, the traffic safety plan has proposed to put mitigation at the end of Southwest Third on the Ivy Street area that will prevent any entrance from there onto Southwest Third. That means that every vehicle that leaves this development is going to have to turn left into that crazy Nexus intersection and cross over into Grant and go around in a circle to get back to the development if they're looking for a parking spot. We're supposed to discourage that type of traffic. Moving on. Moving to bring up the topic of safety, that rolled curb that's going to be 180 foot long all the way along the side of that driveway to be in place for the fire truck is not the same as the one that's down the street at Trivoli. The one down at Trivoli is a completely bordered curb, except in the corner, there's a curve there, and only the curve has the rolled area. Traffic, the public works.
You said like you have people that have donated their time to you, Gina, is that correct?
Yes, I do. I have
Sandy and Patsy.
And Bob Taylor, my husband. Yes.
I have two people listed here, Sandy and Patsy. So I'll reset the timer if you have 10 more minutes.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I only need about 4.
Okay, go ahead.
Our Public Works Design Standard number 2-210 discourages the use of those mounted curbs. I'll read it to you. It says mountable curbs shall not be used unless approved by the city administrator or designee. That for a mountable curb to be permitted, a special circumstance must exist, like the development with townhouses where 90% of the frontage is a driveway. Also, Canby's Land Use Ordinance 1610-070B8 is a chart that lists the minimum access requirements and states minimum of 1 sidewalk connection to residences and parking areas, curbs required if the sidewalk is adjacent to a driveway. They are not doing that in this situation, and it's going to be a very dangerous situation for pedestrians. So we're left with the nebulous topic of what is the correct density for this parcel. Let's start with the minimum density for the parcel. Staff indicates the minimum density is 7. As Jennifer mentioned, they used the incorrect math because you have to remove the area for the street. You can't build in the street. It doesn't apply for density. The ordinance for that is 1620-030 Development Standards A. Minimum density for a property is calculated by multiplying its area in acres minus the area required for street right-of-way and public open space areas by the density standard. Therefore, instead of starting with 0.44 acres, which includes the street right-of-way, we have to start with 0.36 acres multiplied by the 14 units per acres, means that our minimum is 5 units. Okay. I feel that achieving the minimum of 5 units for this parcel with these street conditions is reasonable, but that option would force the developer to redesign the buildings. One solution and more equitable approach is to allow 6 units, which is exactly 1 building as they are currently designed. I feel the problematic issue will be resolved in the not too distant future when the additional R2 land in the 3 adjacent lots, which have big backyards, just like this one, are ripe for development and will indeed be converted to apartments, such as the property immediately adjacent at 299 Southwest 3rd. This projected development would allow negotiations between the properties for joint access across the complexes, and specifically by the creation of an access off Southwest 4th Avenue in the back. State Street would only need to postpone building their second building until the neighbors redevelop, but it is reasonable to request this delay until a safe and equitable access occurs to minimize the traffic and safety issues and impact on this neighborhood. In the meantime, upon building the first building, State Street would have the opportunity to allow the residents in Building 1 to have plentiful parking up until Building 2 is completed, meaning no worries about street parking during that time. And that's a win. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience.
No, of course, I understand. It's very taxing to try and figure out these technical things, Zoom stuff, and I've had my own issues with it tonight myself. You're no problem. Thank you for your testimony tonight. Okay, that concludes the proponents. I don't have a list yet of opponents. Have there been any opponents that have arrived, Melissa?
Not this room, not that's raising their hand.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing Joe.
Oh, sorry. The applicant held back some of his time. I don't know if he wants to speak.
Right, I know. I was just wondering opponents that were signed up or had joined us. So then now it is time for applicant's rebuttal. And you have roughly 4 minutes left of your time.
Thank you. Quickly, I'll just say thank you to the neighbors that took the time to speak to this. And I wanted to state just quickly that State Street, we're empathetic to these concerns. And I can certainly understand any change in the neighborhood can bring unease, and we're not numb to that. So I'm just going to quickly address a few of the things that the most common concern that I heard from all of the testimonies was just the traffic impact and the concern about traffic safety. I think those are valid concerns. I think, again, all I can do is refer back to the fact that we used the DKS, who has contract with Canby, to do these studies twice, looked at this. They concluded that the impact that we're making traffic-wise to this street is less in both, whether you look at mid-rise or low-rise, we are under both standards, so we're not making much of an impact at all. We are providing adequate parking. We're meeting the standard in the code. We provided the adequate amount of parking spots on site. We believe that will be appropriate for that project. I think that we also talked a lot about design compatibility. Again, I understand the concerns. I think that Eric did a great job outlining the diversity of this particular neighborhood and that there is a significant mix of multifamily and single family homes. So I would have to disagree that this project is not significantly different than what we see as a mix in that particular community. Something else that I heard come up a couple of times, I think Jenny mentioned this, and I don't remember who else did, but the density calculation, the 0.44 acres. I did want to clarify that the 0.44 acres of our property does not include the easement. Easements are not included in property size. The easement belongs to the land belongs to the property. We just have easement rights across it. So density was based on our property. I thought it was interesting. I wanted to point out that Billie Jean and Jonathan Claiborne both mentioned they're the homeowners that purchased the property since we entered into this project that's in front of our project and our easement crosses across. And they did acknowledge that they were aware of this project coming in the easement. I think that's important. It sounds like maybe they hadn't considered the impact, but I do think it's important that they acknowledge that they did know that easement was there. They did know that it was going to be our access. We, of course, are going to be putting a fence on the side. So we've heard a lot of concern about having that driveway that close to their window, and I think that's a valid concern, but we're going to be providing privacy fence at our expense to mitigate that for them. I'm not sure on the sidewalk piece. I think we added the sidewalk at the request of city staff, of planning staff and the neighbors. That actually wasn't even a part of our original proposal. We proposed to add the sidewalk actually to provide pedestrian safety. The rollable curb is appropriate. It is designed to divert most vehicles, but it also does provide that access for the fire trucks. Mr. Bob Canberra mentioned something about fire trucks being 16 feet wide, which I'm not sure where he got that data, but that is incorrect. The largest fire truck that I'm aware of is 10 feet wide. And again, as Eric mentioned, Canby Fire looked at this project, looked at the access, approved. They are the ones that requested the 26-foot width easement access. They approved it. They've approved the turnaround for appropriate apparatus trucks in the case of any fire. Let's see what else I wanted to touch on. I guess that's it. I guess to conclude, I would just remind council that what Eric said. I think You guys are charged to look at this project with facts and with the code. Again, we've not asked for any appeals. We've not asked for any variances. We've designed and proposed a project that meets the standards outlined in a code that's been there since 1980, and then have gone above and beyond to spend our time and money with DKS to look at this twice for the impact that we're going to make on this community traffic-wise. And again, we're going to be around for a long time. This project is not going to be sold. We will continue to own this project, and we take a lot of pride in the properties that we own. So we'll be a part of this community as well for a long time. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I now am going to close the public hearing. Are there any questions from the hearing body? Councilor Spoon.
I have a couple of questions for city staff that came up during some of the testimony, and I don't know if you would prefer that now during the public hearing or if you want me to ask during.
The public hearing is now closed. It's time for us to ask our questions.
Great. Joe, one of the questions is for you, and then the other one will probably be for our planning department. Are you there, Joe? I can't see. You're really tiny on my screen. Oh, there you are.
You looked a pretty person.
I know. I'm like, I need yeah. So, Joe, in Mr. Claiborne's testimony,
yeah,
he had some concern about the title designation for his property and mentioned that his intention would be to file a lawsuit against the city and the developer should this project be approved as is or the appeal denied. Do you see, based on what we know, and I know that you probably don't have the title for the property in front of you with the exhibits and restrictions, but what kind of liability the city might have if its title designation were interpreted the way he interpreted it?
Well, if you're asking if the city has two private property owners that are adjacent to each other, and one owns the right of ingress and egress across the other's property to a certain footage for the purposes of going in and out, that can be interpreted in several different ways. Certainly, foot traffic is going in and out of a property just like driving a car is. You're right, I don't have the verbiage in front of me of what their easement is, but the fact that the city allows for the outright permitted use of the property and they're asking for a paved portion of, the easement to actually be there in order to facilitate trucks or fire or whatever it is, that the remaining portions of that are just simply between the whatever happens between the two property owners and the way in which that goes.
You don't really see a scenario where the city is exposing itself to liability if they approve this?
No. Okay. I mean, it isn't like we're allowing for something that is illegal. A
dispute between
if somebody has the right to do something across a property, they can argue that in a court of law. But we're not saying you must create a meth lab. We're simply saying part of if you're going to be making and using your land, then you have to have paved access in there.
Okay. My second question is, as we all know, there are times that code can be challenging to interpret for people that are not fully with degrees in urban planning. The way that Oregon land use law works and the way that our code's written, do you believe that we could, should it be the will of council, require a reduction of units or stories?
Well,
or a modification of the appeal?
Well, so in order for you to modify this, you have to override the planning commission. And in order to override the planning commission, you have to find that they either did not correctly interpret the requirements of the title, comprehensive plan or requirements of law, that they didn't observe precepts of good planning as interpreted by you guys, or that they didn't adequately consider all the pertinent information. And it's not just all information, it's all pertinent information. So information that cuts right to the core of, the land use issues in play here. So the first step is you would have to find that they didn't meet one of those requirements.
Okay.
And then if you want to look at changing their ruling, then you have to, I guess if you find that they didn't, if somehow the precepts of good planning or the requirements of law weren't met, or that the pertinent information wasn't considered, I guess as to how the land's being used, it's really a sticky proposition to say that an outright permitted use that doesn't have a maximum density, that to second guess how a person wants to use their land to the highest and best use in a area that's been zoned that way for 41 years is one that I would advise against.
Okay. I kind of hear the crux of you saying that the standard by which were we the original hearing body, would approve or deny this application is different than the criteria we're able to look at during an appeal, right? Even if we may have come to a different conclusion than Planning Commission, our job is to actually address the appeal. Yes. And overturning that is a different standard.
Yeah, okay. You're looking at the criteria, the three reasons that you would think that they got it wrong.
Right.
And what's happening is somebody's applying to use their land in a particular way. And if it's being used in a legal way in accordance with the layers of law and the good precepts of planning, and the body that decided that land use was appropriate didn't somehow miss some really important and pertinent information, then you can't get to that second step.
One of the compelling pieces of testimony to me, I guess I would need your feedback on too. It was whether or not rolling curbs would be allowed if the sidewalk was adjacent to a driveway. And I guess I see the safety concern if there's nothing to cause a hard stop on a car if someone's walking on the sidewalk. So, and that I guess Ms. Taylor indicated was perhaps part of the Public Works Design Standards 2 to 2.1. I don't know that I've seen that particular document, and I'm kind of wondering if you interpret that the way that she did in terms of not having rolling curbs when it's adjacent to a driveway.
Well, I think it's permissible. The idea is that they are, I guess, discouraged, but they're even allowable, not even by the policy bodies, but even administrative override if certain conditions are met. But the idea is, you're supposed to look at factors and make sure that there's safety. The irony maybe in this certain situation is that the safety, it cuts both ways, right? The idea of having an elevated situation so that people can walk safely, but then that fire trucks can actually access, it only has so many answers. I thought I heard staff say that there was another type of curbing that could be used as well. He hinted at that there was an option there, and I'm looking behind me at Dawn because, Eric's on the line here. I don't know if he might provide a better option in terms of the type of curbing. It looks like, the ideas that I saw in the presentation where sidewalks could go either on one side to kind of further buffer away from the house, or they could go on the other side to, for whatever, the idea of the safety and the viewing of where people are walking. And then the type of curbing I think could be messed with as well.
Okay.
So, Eric, do you have any more to add to that?
Yeah, a few things. One, given this is a private access easement, I'm not sure how the Public Works Design Standards become the playbook for how it should be designed.
That's an excellent point.
And the second point is, I think there are a number of ways, and I believe the applicant has indicated that they are willing to do what is appropriate, which can be fleshed out in a pre-construction meeting. There's those collapsible, kind of like tall white cone things, you know what I'm talking about? That could be placed where a truck, if it needed to, could drive right over those and get in there. That creates even more separation. There's a variety of different types of rollable curbs. Some have more distinct boundaries than others. But I think there is a balance between the pedestrian interconnection and safety and like a clear demarcation of here's where a pedestrian walks versus not having that at all and having just a full paved asphalt area.
Awesome.
That helps to clarify.
Yeah, thanks for all that clarification. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
I have a
Councilor
question. Thank you. I have two questions. First, one of the concerns was in regard to parking on the street at the access point on the road. Is it possible that the city could like have no parking on either side for one parking spot of that driveway?
Yes, the city can control its own streets, so you could take out red paint tomorrow and do it if you want. Or you could wait till the actual development goes in. I know Bob Camera has spoken with me on a couple of different occasions about street parking in general and a little bit more in that neighborhood as it pertains to some of the businesses over there too. And nobody wants to take out the red paint and paint clear down one side usually because it affects everybody who lives there. And then suddenly they have to park in front of other people's homes and things like that. But if there are safety issues, the safety commission ends up opining about what we should do in terms of traffic control devices and mitigation and such. That is ancillary, frankly, to whether or not tonight's discussion about whether the precepts of good planning, the law, and all the pertinent information were considered for the purposes of just looking at this land use. So if that's kind of helpful.
It is. I was concerned about the egress of fire trucks into that driveway and their ability to make that corner. It is a narrow street if people are parked on both sides. I drive it every day, twice. And it's not very busy. Kids walk down the middle of it because kids, I don't know, that there's a phobia of using the sidewalk. But the other question I have is, it was said in one of the comments that there's a plan to close access to 3rd Avenue from Ivy. Is that, I'd never heard that before. That would certainly change the traffic patterns remarkably. Is that actually in the works anywhere?
I can speak.
That's news to me.
So there's a number of potential improvements in the transportation system plan and the list. Really?
Eric, you're breaking up again.
If I could read the tea leaves on that.
Yeah. Also, Ken may be able to speak to it.
Okay, well, shoot. If the transportation plan has certain tools in its toolbox, but you don't have to necessarily do them, there isn't currently any plans looking around the room to our administrator and to our public works director that to specifically engage in that particular tool in your toolbox.
All right, thank you. That's all.
You're on mute, Councilor or Council President Hensley.
Sorry, I'm trying to navigate from, I was started on the iPad and now I'm on the laptop. Any other questions from the hearing body?
Okay, seeing none, we now have discussion from the hearing body. A decision will be made by the hearing body at the close of this hearing, and any the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future, and this is the only notice of that date you will receive. Let's open up for discussion. Counselors? Counselor Spoon.
I'll go ahead and start. I made some notes, so hold on. First off, I think that the testimony is really compelling, and I really appreciate all of the citizens and neighbors that came to speak. And Jennifer, I know it's emotional, and I know that, but I'm going to guess that the people that you're representing understand that it's difficult to cover a lot of information in a 10-minute period, and I think you did a good job communicating what the neighbors were looking for, because we were able to supplement it with the packet. And so thank you so much. I have a number of thoughts, and I just kind of want to address some of the concerns from the community, because I'm not sure that I personally would have come to the same conclusion as Planning Commission, but our standards for overturning Planning Commission's decision, like Joe, our city attorney, said, is very different than approving from the beginning, right? So I do think that the community should work with the Historic Review Board to assess and bring us a recommendation on whether or not a historic overlay or some individual designations in that neighborhood would be appropriate. We don't have them right now, so we can't prevent a project from moving forward, even if it's potentially historic. So, you guys seem pretty organized and on the same page about what you'd like to see in the neighborhood. It might be a good next step for you guys to work with the Historic Review Board to protect those properties or get an overlay. I also want to acknowledge that the area has been of concern to the Traffic and Safety Committee, specifically related to the arguably excessive use of street parking by a neighboring business. And I do think that we need to revisit our traffic requirements. I'd like to see that done. It's an ongoing issue with every approval that we seem to do. It comes up in every project. And I think maybe either revisiting it or determining if the current requirements in our code appropriately meet the needs of our community. Unfortunately, we have the standards that we have, and all the evidence we have is that there is not enough of a traffic issue to use it as a denial for denial for the project. I do think that, again, I'd encourage the neighbors to work with the Traffic and Safety Committee to monitor particularly the ingress and egress of that driveway that goes back, those 88 trips, to make sure that there's appropriate visibility coming in and out of that driveway. And I think that the Traffic and Safety Committee would be a good partner. Councilor Banks suggested, maybe creating some small no parking designations on either side to improve visibility. It seems that we have, as usual, a number of issues with code, and I'm once again going to implore city staff and the Planning Commission to correct the code that we already know is ambiguous and at times outdated. It continues to cause issues for our citizens and for us, and I think we have a responsibility to make sure that our code accurately represents the city's needs and expectations, and I think our current code fails to do that. One of the issues is that our code is not at all user-friendly, and that came up a number of times tonight. You can go to a section of the code to look at an issue and believe that you have an answer, only to find out that that same issue is addressed also in another seemingly unrelated part of the code, and it would be unreasonable to expect any citizen to know where all they need to look to get an answer. We've been talking about this for the 5 years I've been on council, and I'm certain it's been for much longer. But we can't wait anymore for updates and code corrections because this is an ongoing issue. And I noticed that Planning Commission meetings are frequently canceled because of lack of agenda items. That would be a good time to not cancel those meetings and have this addressed. But I want to acknowledge how frustrating the code is for the citizens, and I think we see that tonight. However, we have certain requirements to meet when it comes to an appeal. I do think that while I don't like our code, this project does seem to meet it. I found it really compelling when Ms. Taylor was talking about whether the curbs would be required if a sidewalk's adjacent, but I think our staff is correct that because it's a private road, public work design standards maybe aren't the appropriate standard to follow. But so I found the testimony incredibly compelling, and I surprised myself in thinking about whether or not I could get behind the appeal, but I just think when I look at the actual requirements that we have to judge the appeal on, even though I'm not sure I personally would have made the same decision as planning commission to approve the project, the appeal standards are different, and I'm finding myself leaning towards denying the appeal, but feeling very frustrated and empathetic about it. So, but I'm interested in what the other counselors do.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Spoon. I agree with a lot of what you said, but I'll hold my comments to hear what the other counselors have to say. Councilor Banks, Parker, Varwig, do you have any comments or questions? Councilor Banks.
I think this is a really challenging topic. It's awkward and uncomfortable when progress moves into a neighborhood, and it's sad. Some of these houses are beautiful. The house next door, the yellow one, is my favorite house in Canby, and it has been for a long time. And I understand the tragedy for the homeowner, because this really does detract from that house. And the house, I think, was just purchased recently, and in a high density, residential area. But still, it is a tragedy. Meanwhile, I think we do have a housing shortage. And so, I really find myself sympathizing with both sides on this issue. I think that we need more apartments. And, I have a real concern that my children, who are 18 and 20, will not be able to afford to live in Canby because it's so expensive to buy homes here, and there's so few places to rent. My wife and I rented for many years before we bought our first home, and that's a great option. In terms of the actual voting, the only area I could see voting with the appeal is in the middle category, the precepts of planning as determined by the council, which strikes me as being awfully vague. I am concerned about the traffic on that street. I am part of the traffic on that street, and my students walk it every day. But I don't anticipate that would be a legal reason for us to approve the appeal, and so I will be voting to uphold the original Planning Commission decision. But I'll be doing so with a heavy heart, and I agree with Councilor Spoon that there are some challenges in our code that make it easier for people to put 3-story apartment buildings in next to neighborhoods that have these old homes that are 100 years old, and are treasures really to our community. We need both, and it's very difficult to accommodate both, and it's not smooth and it's not comfortable.
Thank you, Councilor Banks. Councilor Parker, Councilor Varwig, do you have any thoughts, concerns, questions?
I think since I will be abstaining from a vote tonight, I don't want any testimony to sway anybody's decision, so I'll just withhold any comment since I'm abstaining.
Thank you, Councilor Varwig. Councilor Parker, did you have a question, concern, or comment?
Well, I liked where Sarah was going earlier on trying to noodle away to a better outcome for everybody, but unfortunately, that is not the question before us. We're given a binary question of whether this meets the threshold to overturn a planning commission, and we're kind of stuck with that one. Sarah's right. For a decade, we've been trying to carve out enough time and resources to give us more flexibility in handling this growth. I mean, some of us saw this a decade ago when we had a total of 2 planning permits pulled for houses, and for 6 months the planning commission didn't meet. And some of us tried to say now would be a terrific time to crack open the code and take a look at the traffic counts, some of the density issues. But that didn't happen. So here's where we are. I remember when I first moved to Canby, one of the things people told me about was how much people respected property rights. That you buy a piece of property and you buy it with a set of rules, and this property is zoned residential high density. So it's not like we can change the rules in the middle of the game. These people bought this property, they put in the application, given the rules that we've got. So I'm going to, like Chris said, rather sadly, vote to uphold the Planning Commission's decision.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Private property rights, as everybody knows, who knows me, that's been near and dear to my heart. And so I find myself in a quandary often, and as I am now, because I understand the neighbors' testimony. They were very compelling, as Councilor Spoon said. I understand the traffic impacts. I'm hoping that the developer will do everything possible to mitigate some of that. And as some know, we've been doing, like Councilor Parker said, for a decade now, we've been trying to work on the code. We had some commissioners on the board one time who that was the main goal, was to use that time that meetings were being canceled for lack of agenda, use that as a work session time. But unfortunately, it never came to fruition. So I'm hoping that maybe now we can finally get to that point. I don't want to see another planning commission meeting canceled. It should be used for other purposes. They're to meet. If they don't have an agenda, they should be doing this work because it needs to be done. So as we've been told, what was presented before us, the agenda at hand is, did the Planning Commission make the decision based on our criteria and our codes? Did they make the correct decision? And so at this point, I believe they have, and it's unfortunate for the neighbors. I apologize for their concerns, and I hope that the developer will do what they can to help mitigate some of those concerns. The main thing that concerns me is the rolling curb and the fact that it's so close to the bedroom window. That does concern me, and I hope that something can be done about that. As a courtesy for the neighborhood, even though it's not necessarily required in our code. So, Mark, if you're still on, I hope you hear that and can do something about that. If there's other questions or concerns, we need to take a vote. So I will accept a motion. I'm not hearing anyone.
That's because no one wants to make the motion, but I'll make the motion just because I believe it's the legal obligation that we do that.
Your motion is to deny the appeal? You need to make a motion, sir.
Chris, you're muted. You're muted. We're not hearing your motion.
Sorry, I'm looking for the proper phrasing, but my motion is to uphold the Canby Planning Commission's decision on this. And it's just the 390 pages of this. It's stalled out. I can't scroll. I cannot make the motion using that phrase, but I move to uphold the commission.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion has been made by Councilor Bangs and seconded by Councilor Spoon to uphold the Planning Commission decision and deny the appeal. All those in favor? For? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and the approval, yeah, has been denied 4-0-1.
Tracy, you're starting to sound like Eric, just so you know.
Moving on to the consent agenda.
Tracy, you're like Eric. Yeah.
I think it's because the air conditioning just came on. Hang on, let me turn it off. Okay. I need a one for the second to the we're on the consent agenda.
I think you say we're moving on to the consent agenda, and I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes of the July 28th, 2021 special meeting and the August 4th work session and regular meeting.
To make a motion for the
I'll second when Tracy's
accept
done
the
talking.
consent agenda.
Tracy, you're not caught up, so
Bueller.
I think you say we're moving on to the consent agenda, and motion for the consent, which includes the minutes of the 2021 special meeting, August 4th work session and regular.
It's been moved by.
Second when
Can you guys hear me? What is happening here?
Now we
Can you
can.
guys hear me?
Now we can.
I'm muted. What is going on?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Tracy, it seems like you might.
You can. Okay, that's weird. All right. Okay.
Turn your video off, Tracy. That might help you.
Wig and seconded by Counselor Spoon to accept the consent agenda. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. It's been moved by Counselor Varwig and seconded by Counselor Spoon to accept a consent agenda that consists of the minutes of the July 28th special called city council meeting and the August 4th work session regular meeting. All those in favor? Okay, that's 5 ayes. It's been accepted.
Do you want,
Okay, moving on to the next.
Tracy, you're still cutting out really bad. Would you like me to take over for a few minutes until you can get that figured out?
I don't know what to, let me try my phone. I'm on my laptop, which is fully charged. I'm not sure what's going on.
Would you like me to take over for a few minutes till you can get that figured out?
Hang on a sec. Okay. Oh, please. We're almost there.
Melissa, I don't know if taking some of the people out of the panelist side will be helpful. I don't know if that's helpful at all.
That might be. Is that helping to take people off?
Seems to be a little bit, yes.
Can you guys hear me?
We didn't hear you for a while.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better now, Tracy.
Okay. Well, the next item on the agenda is resolution number 1358, resolution giving consent for the assignment of all contractual rights, duties, and obligations in the exclusive franchise to provide waste disposal in the city of Canby from Canby Disposal Company to Kahoot Companies Holdings Incorporated. Scott?
Yeah, can everyone hear me? Are we, okay. Yeah, Joe, Lindsay, I'll handle this really quickly if I can, which is there is going to be a sale of the stock from Canby Disposal Company over to its mother company, the
Joe,
K.
can you hold for a minute? Tracy, can you turn your mute on, please? Oh, she did. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, so in order to do the stock maneuver, they got a hold of us and said, can we keep you basically as an existing franchisee? Our franchise itself is a exclusive franchise right for waste disposal, and it's special in that it's a rolling 10-year franchise. And in the industry, this is important. It's so intensively front-loaded with infrastructure when you have one of these waste disposal franchises, that because of that, we basically give people the heads up that if we actually want to end the relationship with them, we give them the 10-year window. That's what that rolling means, is that every year that you let it renew, it's a 10-year window that then you'd have to give them the heads up that we're gonna end the franchise in 10 years. So it was important to them to keep us as a client, as their other clients, as they transfer control by virtue of the stock sale. And so we do have a provision in our franchise agreement that allows for this type of assignment. They have been around for a long time here, but that doesn't change the fact that every year that rolling franchise ends up being a 10-year franchise. So this isn't one of those. They want to exercise a provision in it that is allowable under it, which is to ask for us to consent for the change of control, even though effectively it's going to have the same trucks, the same drivers, and be the same service with all of the rights, duties, responsibilities, and obligations that the franchise currently has. So they were asking it as basically a formality so that they can sell some stock. And I know Ray Kahoot is here to answer any questions or to present any ideas if you need to hear from him.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kahoot? Councilor Parker.
No, this seems pretty straightforward to me. I as long as Ray is here, once we conclude this resolution, I did want to ask him another question.
Okay. Any other questions from councilors? Okay. Anybody want to make a motion about the resolution?
I move to adopt Resolution 1358, a resolution giving consent for the assignment of all contractual rights, duties, and obligations in the exclusive franchise to provide waste disposal in the city of Canby from Canby Disposal Company, CDC, to Kahoot Companies Holdings Incorporated, KCH.
I will second.
Okay, it has been moved and by Councilor Spoon and seconded by Councilor Varwig to approve resolution number 1358, a resolution giving consent for the assignment of all contractual rights, duties, and obligations in the exclusive franchise to provide waste disposal in the city of Canby from Canby Disposal Company, CDC, to Kahoot Companies Holdings Incorporated, KCH. All those in favor? Aye. There's 5 ayes. That means there's no opposed. So passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the discussion regarding the appointment. Pardon?
Tracy, if I could ask Ray a question here while he's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Go ahead, Greg.
Ray, last time you were here before us, we had talked about this element in our franchise where I'm not going to get this exactly right, but it sounds like you have to go back each year and calibrate how much you lost and then change the rates, that you can't do it prospective. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That is not my specialty, but I'm aware of what you're talking about. Yes. Hopefully I can answer your question. I'll try my best, but
no, it's just that last time we talked, we were in a process of hiring a city manager. We have one now, so I did want to extend the courtesy of saying that if there is a way that you need to renegotiate the franchise so that you can project your that's I would certainly be welcome to it, but that's all we need to say at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Okay. The next on the agenda is the discussion regarding the appointment process for the city councilor vacancy. As we know, last meeting, Councilor Tibbles Henley. So the appointment process dictates that we accept applications from the public and then do an interview process. So I'm looking here, the deadline for applications would be September 30th at 5 p.m. Applications will be forwarded then to the mayor and council on October 1st for review. Interviews will be held at the next city council meeting dated October 6th at 7:30 p.m. And the new city councilor would be sworn in October 20th at 7:30 p.m. The question before us is, are we willing to, if we have a lot of applicants that we can't get the interviews done in a timely fashion and not keep everybody up until 11 o'clock at night on the 6th, are we willing to have a special meeting on the 13th to continue those application interviews?
I would be open to a special meeting on the 13th. I would actually rather do them in subsequent nights so that there wasn't such a long delay, so that we could take everything into consideration in a short period, if that's possible. But if that's not possible, I mean, if we have a lot of applicants, it only makes sense to respect their time and not make everyone interview at 11 p.m.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So let's.
But my preference would be to do it in subsequent nights for continuity, and also so that people had similar amounts of time to prepare after hearing questions. I think there would be an advantage to someone that had an extra week after hearing interviews to prepare, and I want it to be fair.
You know, that is a fair point. And the only problem with that is that the C4 meeting is Thursday, the 7th. So the mayor and I would not be able to attend that meeting. But we could do maybe, if anyone is not opposed to doing Friday the 8th, then it's only like a day off. Councilor Varwig.
Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that when we adjusted our start time for our meetings, we adjusted it to be able to start at any time, correct, as long as it was noticed. So the other option is, if we get a whole bunch of applications, we could start our council meeting earlier on the 6th for the interviews. And I think I would be more open to starting earlier, like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, to try and give people the extra time than to try and come back on the second night. I don't know how many applications to anticipate. So it's hard to say until we know. This kind of goes back to Councilor Parker's comment earlier about trying to solve a problem that we don't know if we have it or not. And so I think it's great to talk about the options, but I think my preference would be to try and start the meeting a little bit earlier that night if we have a whole bunch, and maybe let's talk about it once it happens. And Joe, is this something that we need to decide in a council meeting, or can we decide through when we know, can we make a decision to start the meeting earlier? How do we have to make that call?
Well, it's helpful for you guys, since most of you were here, to decide a start time is usually the province of the mayor. But if you all want to decide now would be great, or, technically you only need 24 hours notice to have a meeting scheduled. So, at any time before 24 hours, you could change it or come up with a time. So if you want to wait until all the applications are in, then you could pick the time, or you could trust your council president and or mayor to set a time once all the applications are in, looking at the number of them, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Joe. Scott, what do we currently have on the schedule, on the agenda for October 6th? Are we looking at a heavy agenda, or do we have some leeway that we could maybe just start a little earlier and do it all in one night, as Councilor Barwig has suggested?
My recollection is that it's a fairly light agenda that evening, and I don't think we have any work sessions planned yet. So that would mean we could back up into the work session time as well. So I think the combination of those two things, I would think we could get it done in one night. I would hope anyway, depending on the number.
Okay, and then with just saying that we really only have to change the date or the time, in 24 hours notice, my recommendation would probably be just to, let's see on the 30th how many applications we end up with. And when they're all forwarded to us, we can make that determination if we want to start earlier on the 6th or plan a secondary meeting. I anticipate if we have a light agenda, we can probably just back up the start time and do it all in one night. I don't know. What does everybody else think? I think I saw Councilor Spoon's hand up.
Oh, I'm fine with that. My question was actually regarding the agenda as well, and if there were things that were not urgent, and we had a number of applications, move those to the following meeting, but I think that was addressed. But I'm okay with an earlier start time, but I also have a more flexible job than some other people. So don't defer to me on that. I will accommodate. I would maybe look at Councilor Bangs and people involved that have more rigid timelines for their work.
Well, we started our night tonight at 6:30 with a work session. It sounded like, Scott, we don't have a work session that night, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so if we needed to start our council meeting at 6:30 to accommodate the interviews, that would suffice for everyone? Am I seeing accommodation there? I'm seeing head nods.
I will be zooming in from Portugal at 2 a.m. So I'll be attending, but
okay. Councilor Banks, did you have a question or comment?
Well, no, I was just
Councilor Banks.
We have also started work sessions at 6 and at 5:30 since I've been on the council. My strong preference would be to start as early as 5:30 if we have a pile of interviews we have to conduct. I don't really want to meet on that Friday. It's homecoming, and the following Wednesday is parent conferences. So, both of those nights are not good ones for me. If we did a different day, it would not be those 2 days for me.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is everybody is open to just starting at whatever time we deem appropriate for the number of applications we get and get it all done on one night on the 6th. Am I hearing you all right? Head nods, thumbs up. Okay. All right, Scott. So we'll just, on the 30th, whatever applications we get, we'll deem how many minutes we need for that many applications and interviews, and we'll just start on the 6th as appropriate. Okay?
Very good. Very good. Understood.
Very good. Next is a discussion regarding amending the Canby City Municipal Code to include the Library Advisory Board and Heritage and Landmark Commission student members as voting members. Who's taking the lead on this? Scott?
Well, actually, I think Councilor Bangs might want to speak to this. I believe this was his his initiative, and then we can answer any questions for you.
This is my initiative, and I'm asking the council to place this on the agenda appropriately for a code amendment. The rationale behind it is we have 2 student members, and it says in our code that they're non-voting members. 2 student members of those 2, the Library Advisory Board and the Historic Landmarks Commission. My philosophy is either if the students are not qualified to participate fully and vote, then they're probably not qualified to be asked to sit on those boards and attend all of those meetings in the first place. And so I would support an either or, but I think that what we're doing now is unfair to the students. So I would like to have the council put that on the agenda, have Joe dial up the language, which I believe means substituting the word non-voting for voting.
Councilor Spoon. Councilor Parker, please mute. And Councilor Spoon, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President Hensley. Yeah, I like the idea of having them vote. I like having them on the board. I think having non-voting members, because of their age, is kind of dismissive of their input and unique perspective. And we have other boards that where people under 18 would be allowed and be voting. So I don't really see a reason to not do it, just because it's a designated spot for someone in high school. My only concern is that our language, that whatever Joe writes, addresses the potential concern that we would not be able to, that there would be ties. I'm sure there's already a fix for that, but as long as that's part of the consideration, I would love to see this on an agenda in the near future.
I can give you options for that too.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in favor of putting this on the agenda. I think that our youth are our future, and they sometimes are more mature than some of the adults in our community. So I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be voting members of the boards that they are allowed to be on. And so I definitely am in favor of this, and I would love to see us empower our youth and even more of our youth to get involved in our community and give them the voting power. So I'm definitely in favor of putting it on the agenda for a vote.
Thank you, Councilor Barwood. Councilor Banks.
I'm going to recommend that we put it on the agenda for the next council meeting, but I'm expressing a great willingness to remove it and put it on the following meeting if we have a huge pile of interviews we have to conduct. So this is not an emergency. I'd like to see it happen, but I don't want to go till 11 o'clock that night either.
Thank you for that. I was hoping you were going to give us a couple more weeks. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Joe.
Okay, so if I'm bringing this forward, this particular ordinance, our library director was asking about the fact that currently the library director is also the secretary of the Library Advisory Board, and he was wondering if that really needed to be the case, that he is the scribe at every meeting, or whether or not that could just be excised. So I will be bringing that potential forward at the same time for you to, since we're already looking at that particular ordinance, to see if you want to excise that at that time.
It is my understanding that the staff is the staff liaison to those boards. So each individual board should have their own secretary, their own chair, their own vice chair, et cetera. There's no reason why the library director should be the scribe. They should have their own secretary. That's how every other commission and board works.
That's how he would like that. So I'll bring that amendment to you at the same time.
Yeah, I don't even know that needs to be an amendment unless the library board language is written differently than the other boards.
It's actually in the ordinance.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, please bring that to us because that can't be. Yeah, our staff shouldn't be the secretary to the cities and commissions. No. So yes, please bring that to us as well. Any other questions or concerns or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll put that on a future agenda, maybe next meeting, but potentially the one after that. The next item on the agenda is discussion regarding canceling or attending the October 20th meeting virtually, but that is going to be removed from the agenda as the League of Oregon Cities Conference in Bend has been canceled. A longer discussion item. Next item is mayor's business, and mayor is doing his business, so he's not here. So we'll move on to councilor comments and liaison reports. Councilor Parker.
I think it's late enough. I'll save it for next time.
Okie dokie. Councilor Varwig.
I'll try to be quick. Planning Commission, their last meeting was surprise canceled. So there's nothing to report there. Canby Fire Chief did a great report last time, so I'll save that as well. And I'll just say that for CTV, just a few bullet points. They've completed the installation of a new playback server, which improves scheduling and provides a reader board that can play between programming. They currently have 7 new volunteers in training, and that hopefully will lead to more people assisting with CTV5 productions, more local programming, and an increased use of the studio. They are preparing the CTV annual report, which will be submitted to Clackamas County and added to the annual PEG channel report, which includes the local access stations in the county. They are solidifying plans for the fiscal year's equipment needs and production priorities. And they are looking for a board member. Hannah Lambert moved up to Washington, so she's had to step off the board. We thank her for her service and her time there, but they do need to replace her. And then CTV5 filmed the 9/11 memorial ceremony. So check that out on their YouTube and Facebook pages. And that's all that I have for tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Varwig. Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Council President Hensley. My item for Canby Area Transit is that the board and staff have finalized the route for the circulator that we've been talking about for several years. That circulator route is up on their Facebook page if you would like to see it, and also there are still openings on their board. And then I am going to take a minute to say something. As many of you know, this has been an eye-opening week for some of us in Canby. I've been approached by a lot of people and had several conversations about leadership and about how we as a council and a community can come together to do better. So with that in mind, I have something to say in hopes that the rest of council and community will find value in coming together towards healing and kindness. Why do you call Canby home? For me and my family, it was an active choice to make our home here. We chose to come back to Canby, my hometown, to raise our 4 children because I believe it's the greatest town in America. It's a place where I thought we could all let our kids walk safely down the sidewalk without fear of being followed, photographed, or harassed. It's a community where everyone is your neighbor, where the family that owns the grocery store might be bagging your groceries, where the whole community comes together to celebrate holidays at a little postcard-worthy park in the center of town that hosts bands, barbershop quartets, Santa and Mrs. Claus, and dignitaries alike. It's a town where people like myself could not dream of a more idyllic childhood for our kids, and I've often described it as the last great slice of Americana. But the close-knit culture of a community doesn't come from the city charter, a map, or an address. It comes from the actions and words of the people who live here. The small-town feeling of Canby is aspirational, not guaranteed. It's fragile, and it requires active participation from everyone, its leaders and its citizens. We are all responsible for not just maintaining it, but also cultivating it and fiercely protecting it. What is happening now online and in person threatens this community's very core and culture we all love. To those of you engaging in toxicity online, I want you to know that I will resolutely fight for your freedom of speech. I will never try to take away your right to say what you want to say within the law. And in particular, I strongly believe we all, myself included, have a right to be critical of our elected officials. I'm here to plead to the other 99.9% of the community that is tired of the relentless online bullying and harassment that has taken over our community spaces. It's time to take a stand. The harassment and bullying I see online is no longer just obnoxious or annoying, it's becoming reckless and dangerous. There is a consistent and clear pattern of escalation in our community's online bullying. Private citizens are attacking each other, and now children have been targeted, weaponized, doxxed, outed, and attacked. As leaders, I personally believe we've failed you because we've seen it happening and we should have started this conversation years ago. We aren't just elected to pass resolutions and ordinances, leaders lead. The community's trusted us and we haven't stepped forward to say enough is enough. We should be the first ones to fight for the community. We should have decried the online bullying sooner, even if it upset our most fervent supporters, or we feared backlash from the loudest people in our community, because our top priority should be protecting our kids, protecting our neighbors, and defending the identity of Canby. We need to lead by example and stand up to bullies on the front lines instead of hiding on the sidelines. We need to think about what prospective business owners and residents will believe about Canby if they, for instance, join some local Facebook groups to get a sense of what opening a business in or moving to Canby would feel like. Those messages being sent out into the world do not accurately represent who we are, but they continue to damage our community. By all of us together, not just the elected officials, the insidious cruelty and toxicity that has taken root here can be stopped. We're lucky to have no shortage of community leaders and citizens who care about Canby. I know it's often easier to look the other way, avoid engagement, or ignore online comments and threads. You risk becoming a target yourself or getting bogged down in hours of back and forth with people who refuse to hear reason or who actively seek to cause harm. But there is power in numbers, and if we all agree to say something when we see something, to stick our necks out, to hold each other accountable, to stop tolerating harmful behavior, and to bring out the best in each other, we can bring this chaos to an end. Have conversations with people, call on their better angels, and ask your friends and neighbors to step in with you, because we will never be the only voice, but we can band together to be the loudest voice. Silence is complicity, and now is the time to fight for the soul of our city. Canby is not alone in this. In communities across the nation, there's a stronghold of cruelty. Families are estranged, friendships are ruined, and communities are being torn apart by divisive online behavior and the social media platforms that promote engagement over understanding. Canby finds itself at a tipping point now. We have two choices. We can resign ourselves to being a microcosm of what's happening everywhere else, or we can be an example of what's possible to the rest of America. We can still turn the ship around before cruelty takes over and irreparably poisons our town. Let's not look back and think, we should have taken a stand earlier. I have faith that Canby can rise to the occasion as a beacon of hope to not just the people who live here, but to the communities across the country who are struggling to protect their culture of neighborliness, kindness, and love, because we don't have to let it slip away. So Canby, I want you to consider this your call to action. I'm asking you to fight with me against the cruelty, to ask everyone you know to stand with all of us. Let's show America who Canby is, what we're capable, and what's possible when we come together to fight for the community we have all chosen to call home. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Spoon. Councilor Barwick? Councilor Banks? Councilor Parker? Everybody done?
No, I'll go.
Okay, Councilor Banks.
Library Advisory Board meets next week. School board met Monday this week and passed its operating procedures, and that was really about all that the school board did. They'll be meeting on Mondays from now on instead of Thursdays. We are fully back in school and masked. Large crowd came to our football game wearing masks. It was a good experience. We had an anti-mask walkout. It was supposed to be Friday last week, but no one did it, so it happened on Monday, and it was either 10 or 14 kids that went out, and some of them went to Taco Bell, and most of them just went back to class. And that's all I have for that. I just want to add really quite briefly, I've been working with children professionally now since 1998 or 1999. But I don't speak to you as a teacher or a parent or a city councilor, but as a human being. I share this dream that I think all of you should share, that no one hurts the children anymore. And if that isn't what guides us, I don't understand what does. It has to be the most important thing we do, whether you're a man or woman of faith or not. It is extremely difficult to come up with a priority higher than protecting our children. I have zero tolerance for anyone attacking children, and I have zero understanding of it. I'm horrified by what happened, and I feel terrible for our community to have gone through this. That's all I have.
Tracy, if I could add a comment to that too.
Thank you, Councilor Banks. Yes, Councilor Parker.
Yeah, I feel like speaking as a parent of a child with in a situation that didn't feel comfortable being who they were when they were in Canby. And we do have some political differences. I always like to try and keep things on a policy level. Sometimes that's not possible, but I think it is not too high of a political lift to say that we'll leave people's children, their families, and their spouse's source of income out of the political mix. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Yes, unfortunately, in this political realm, we've all been in this situation. I wasn't, it was only a few years ago, I was also in the headlines and scrutiny for things that were happening in my family. So I understand. We sign on for this, our families don't. So thank you, Councilor Parker. Yes, Councilor Barwick.
Yeah, thank you everybody for making those comments. I concur in our kids, our families, leave them alone. You can hate me all you want. You can say what you want to about me, but don't mess with my kids because Papa Bear will come out, and leave our families alone. They didn't ask for it. And I have no understanding and no patience for kids being bullied. I have no patience for bullying in general, but especially to the kids. Our kids are fragile. They are learning. They are absorbing what we are doing. And if we teach them that bullying is okay, this world is not going to ever be a good place. And so please, I implore everybody to leave the kids out of it. And the second that you think that it's okay to put something of a kid on Facebook, please delete your Facebook page because it's just not okay. So whether we agree or disagree, it's clear many of us on this council disagree politically and personally on a lot of things. But one thing that I think that we will all agree on is that our kids deserve to be safe. And so please leave kids out of it. Leave my kids out of it. Leave everybody else's kids out of it. Come after me all you want to, but let's leave the kids alone.
Thank you, Councilor Barwick. Okay, now we've come to the city administrator business and staff reports. We have the bi-monthly reports in our council packets. Scott, do you have anything to add?
Nothing else this evening.
Only because you want to go home, right?
I think everybody does, I'm sure.
Okay, this is the second opportunity for citizen input. We had several comments earlier in the evening, even from folks who didn't live in the city, but we always like to hear their perspective. Melissa, is there anybody else on deck for now?
No other, nobody else has signed up.
I see her shaking her head in the background. Thank you, guys. Okay. So that brings us to action review. Melissa?
You approved the consent agenda, upheld the planning commission's approval of the proposed project DR 21-04, and approved resolution number 1358.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
I move to adjourn.
And,
Second. Aye.
All right, it's been moved as by Councilor Broderick and seconded, actually, I saw Bangs first, sorry, Sarah. Seconded by Councilor Bangs, and it's a non-debatable motion. So we are adjourned. Good night, Canby.